The bells of King's Landing had not yet rung when Daenerys Targaryen stood upon the scorched parapet of the Red Keep's outer wall, dragonstone wind still tangled in her silver-gold hair. Below, the city sprawled like a cracked jewel, its streets trembling under the distant thunder of half-drawn swords and the rumor of approaching dragons. Smoke drifted from the blacksmith forges in Flea Bottom, and far down the Blackwater rushed the battered hulls of Euron's few remaining Scorpion ships listed at anchor, their crews peering skyward for dread of fire that would never fall. She tasted ash on her tongue anyway. Memory, not deed. The embers of Astapor, Meereen, and countless slave pens lived behind her eyes. Drogon crouched on a broken turret nearby, wings half unfurled, the night-black leather of them rustling like a funeral shroud. His furnace breath steamed in the cool spring dawn. One whispered order and he would descend on the capital, a god of flame. But the quiet answer that formed inside her, the answer she had never voiced aloud, was no. She shut her eyes and imagined newborn grass where charred stones should be, children laughing in narrow lanes unsplit by dragon-claw shadows. A softer vision had stolen into her heart during the long sail north from Dragonstone. It had grown in silence amid the whistling rigging, surfacing each night when she stood at the prow and watched the moon ripple on black water. The knowledge that conquest meant ashes, and ashes could never rule. Footsteps scraped behind her. Tyrion Lannister approached, cloak whipped by wind. "You summoned me, your grace, and I find myself unexpectedly alive." His voice carried a fragile jest, but wine-stained eyes held too much gratitude to be mocking. "I expected to die today, either in chains or burnt for treason." "Do you wish to die, Tyrion?" she asked, without turning. The question was earnest. "Not particularly, though my sister's hospitality makes an early grave tempting." Daenerys opened her eyes. "I will not sack this city." Tyrion's mouth parted, as though words had come and gone before he tasted them. "Forgive me, but I must pretend you did not just save 100,000 souls with a single sentence. May I ask why, beyond mercy?" Her fingers found the warm scales on Drogon's neck. The dragon hummed. She thought of the crypt beneath Winterfell, of Jon's steady grip when he urged her to lead, not burn. She thought of Missandei's severed head, rolling from Cersei's parapet, and the way tears scorched more deeply than any fire she commanded. "Fire ends fear only while it burns," she said at last. "When the last ember dies, fear grows again. I will build loyalty instead." "An admirable sentiment," Tyrion murmured, "but one that leaves unanswered the inevitable. How do you speak reason to Cersei Lannister?" "We do not speak to Cersei," Daenerys replied. "We speak to the realm, to the lords who suffer her tyrannies. We offer a choice. Bend the knee to a just queen without bloodshed, or watch their capital burn by their own queen's hand." Tyrion exhaled, half-smile fading. "You intend parley?" "Yes. Cersei will take any parley as weakness. She will aim a scorpion at Drogon and an archer at your heart." "Then she'll prove my words," Daenerys said. Soft wings rustled behind Tyrion. Viserion and Regal circled above, two gray shadows in pale dawn, unbound by chains, gleaming with promise. Promise of terror, promise of peace. Dragons were instruments. She was their purpose. Tyrion bowed his head. "I will arrange the meeting, the dragon pit at midday. Fewer scorpions. Bring Sansa Stark if she will come," Daenerys added. "The North must see diplomacy honored. And Jon." Her throat caught softly on his name. "I suspect the king in all but name will insist on standing beside you whether invited or not," Tyrion said, turning toward the stair. "I should inform the hand of the queen, my queen, that half the city will celebrate your restraint. The other half will call it madness." "So be it," said Daenerys, and to Drogon she whispered, "Fly." The dragon vaulted from the parapet and soared, his great wings coaxing a storm wind that swept her braids across her vision. As he rose, she imagined the city below glimpsing not doom but a dark guardian passing overhead, an omen that perhaps promised something rarer than victory. Hope. In the great hall of the Red Keep, Queen Cersei Lannister stood before a table of burnished red wood carved into the outline of Westeros. Jaime had once joked the map was missing the lumps and warts. Now each holdfast seemed to her an infection draining her strength. Euron was days late, returning from a chase along the stepstones. The Golden Company had arrived with fewer elephants than promised. Famine whispered through the crownlands after autumn's meager harvest. Worst of all, rumors seeped like rats into every alley. Daenerys Stormborn would unleash 3 dragons at sunrise and bathe the city in blue fire. Cersei gripped the rim of the map as though she might throttle the entire realm. Qyburn knelt, presenting a sealed parchment. A message from the Dragon Queen, Your Grace. She ripped it open with one scarlet fingernail. Ink still shone wetly. A demand for parley in the dragon pit under truce. She scoffed. Parley means surrender, and surrender means death. But it buys us time, Qyburn said. And if the dragons remain leashed beyond the city walls, morale may steady. Morale is pliant bread, shaped by hunger, Cersei replied. Still, she looked to the high stained glass windows, red and gold shards of a burning lion. Let the silver whore believe I will negotiate. We'll fill the dragon pit with arrows and scorpions disguised as gifts of peace. She comes, she dies. Midday's sun cast white light over the broken domes of the dragon pit. Once, dragons had lived here, dwindling to sickly bones. Now 3 proud titans circled above with thunder in their throats, a cruel reminder of what House Targaryen had been and might be again. Stone benches that once held crowds were cracked, overgrown by thorny vines, yet now thronged by lords clutching banners like shields. Tyrell Green among them no longer, but stark gray direwolves, Arryn falcons, Tully trout stitched by Sansa's fine hand, and the empty white of House Frye, a silence in cloth. Daenerys entered first. She wore no armor but a robe of black and crimson silk that whispered like coals shaken in a brazier. Jon Snow paced at her side, stark furs traded for black leather too warm for spring sun, yet he sweated not from heat. Grey Worm followed with the Unsullied in a triple row, spears reversed to show peace. Drogon perched on a shattered arch above, watching as if he were the ceiling itself. Opposite, Cersei arrived atop a gilded palanquin borne by Lannister Sellswords. No crown rested on her head, only a simple circlet of burnished gold she had forged herself. Qyburn walked at her elbow, and to Daenerys' surprise, Jaime limped behind, gold hand glinting like molten sun. His eyes flicked to hers with unspoken apology, then away. Between the 2 queens, a sanded stretch of ground empty of guards became their table. Tyrion's voice rang out, "Queens of Westeros, be heard. No blades, no arrows, no treachery beneath these open skies. Speak." Cersei's lips curved. "You burned masters and slavers across the narrow sea and call it justice. Did they fall to their knees and kiss your feet? They rose," Daenerys said, "and built new cities where no child wears chains." She gestured to the lords, to the people gathered on broken tiers. A crippled boy on crutches, who looked on her with awe. A mother clutching a bundle no larger than a milk jug. "I came to break the wheel, not weld my own spokes upon it." "The wheel is built of blood," Cersei hissed. "Your father taught us that. And yours taught you gold could buy absolution," Daenerys replied. "Now both our fathers lie in graves. What matters is the world we leave. I offer you peace, Cersei. Bend the knee, and King's Landing will prosper." Cersei laughed, brittle glass. "Peace, you say? Yet dragons roost above my city." Tyrion stepped forward. "If your grace surrenders peacefully, the dragons will fly north. Their fire will melt the wall, not your throne." Shock rippled through lords and small folk alike. Even Jon flinched. He had not heard this gambit. Cersei's green eyes narrowed. "You would give me my throne? I would give the 7 kingdoms a chance to choose," Daenerys said. "A great council will convene in 6 moons under neutral banners. Every High Lord will vote for the next ruler. If they name you, so be it. Your dragons guarantee their votes through fear," Cersei spat. "Then I shall leave them at Dragonstone," Daenerys answered, "where your scorpions cannot reach." She lifted her chin, pale throat bared. I place my crown upon the scales. Will you place yours? A hush fell like snow. Ravens cawed overhead. Jaime spoke, hoarse. Sister, listen. But Qyburn tugged at Cersei's sleeve. A trick, my queen. Dragons alone can win councils. Cersei shook him off. She gazed across the pit beyond Daenerys, to the people clinging to broken benches. Mothers and hedgers, bakers and sellswords. They looked at her with equal parts fear and accusation. She saw wildlings among them, leather-clad, whispering of freedom earned beneath the wall. She saw gray worms unsullied, unsmiling but unthreatening. Above all, she felt the weight of her own son, the last of her children, who had leapt from a window to escape the prison of her love. Her voice was quiet when it came. I will not bend. She raised her gaze to the dome's jagged hole, to Drogon's silhouette black against sun. But neither will I burn. Daenerys's brow furrowed. Cersei unbuckled her sword, a thin queen's blade, and offered it hilt first. I yield to peace on one condition. The realm votes, as you promise, and should they choose another, you and I both accept exile. No hidden daggers in darkness, no whispers of poison at feasts. We depart Westeros and leave it to the will of its people. Gasps rolled through gathered nobles. Tyrion's eyes shone. Jon stepped forward. And if the council chooses neither queen, then we have given them freedom, Daenerys said. Cersei's smile was thin as quill lines. Swear it on your dragons. I swear on the lives of Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion, Daenerys said, voice firm. I swear on the memory of my children. Cersei's eyes glittered like shorn emeralds. They clasped wrists before the watching realm. Drogon roared, an echo that shook the broken walls like thunder, but his fire stayed banked. Somewhere in the city, a bell tolled. The first clear note of Hope King's Landing had heard in a generation. That night, fires burned purple and blue along the Blackwater as sailors lit lanterns to mark safe passage. No siege flame fell from the sky. In Dragonstone's council room, Daenerys sat at the painted table beside Jon, whose hand hovered near hers but would not settle until the war was truly gone. Tyrion unfurled a parchment. A great council must be summoned, 6 moons as promised. Riverrun's great hall is central and large enough. Sansa will not allow her uncle's hall to host this, Jon muttered. Lady Stark will listen, Daenerys said. She will, Tyrion agreed. If the proposal comes from you both united, and if Lord Gendry Baratheon pledges Storm's End support, the Crownland's lords will follow. Jon studied the map. What of the Iron Islands? Asha Greyjoy holds them, Tyrion replied. She fought for you at Winterfell. If she fears no dragon flame, she will not fear a ballot. Daenerys exhaled, tired but unbroken. Then let us send ravens. Tomorrow. Grey Worm entered, helm held under one arm. My queen, our patrols report no Lannister soldiers outside the palace walls. The city is calm. She nodded. Tell the Unsullied they will return to Meereen after the council. Their freedom there is promised. He bowed deeply. As you command. When he left, Jon finally set his hand over hers. You have done what many thought impossible. Not yet, she whispered. We have only stayed the blade. To forge peace, we must keep it sheathed. Jon's voice was soft. Whatever happens at that council, I will speak for you. And I, she said, meeting his eyes, will speak for me. Weeks flowed like spring rivers. Ravens flew across the realm, summoning high lords and lesser lords alike. 100-year feuds were roused to life in anxious corridors, yet swords remained sheathed. In King's Landing, carpenters rebuilt shattered gates, and bakers returned to ovens that had cooled to dust since the siege began. Small folk whispered of the Silver Queen who spared them, and of the Lion Queen who had stepped down yet lingered in her tower like a restless ghost, unarmed but unbowed. Cersei watched from a balcony as a delegation from Dorne rode through the mud gate under banners of red sun and spear. Had her daughter lived, she thought, a Martell princess might have been among them, hair braided with copper wire. Now peace came not from bloodlines but from ballots. She sipped Arbor Red and tasted another memory. Red Keep corridors where little princes once played. Ghosts haunted her less these days. Each dawn she woke surprised to be alive and found the feeling oddly pleasant. Jaime visited her that evening. He wore new steel forged by Gendry smiths. Plain, functional, without lions. "You should come to the council," he told her. "Why?" she asked, pouring wine. "To watch fools cast stones into water and debate which ripples matter? To remind them ripples drown cities if ignored," he said. "Your voice is still iron." She regarded him over the rim of her goblet. "And yours, dear brother? Will you cast my vote?" "I forsook claims to rule the day I opened Aerys' throat," Jaime answered calmly. "But I will stand beside you." Cersei traced the map of Westeros burned into the balcony's table. Her finger circled Riverrun. 6 moons. Let us see whether the world can change in half a year. At Winterfell, Sansa Stark received Daenerys' raven. She walked the battlements as snow flurried like restless ghosts in May's wan sunlight. Beside her, Arya watched her breath mist. "The Dragon Queen speaks peace," Arya said, voice low. "But dragons are never tame." "No more than wolves," Sansa replied. She tapped the letter. "Yet I believe her, perhaps because she risked everything when she could have burned everything." Arya smiled, fierce. "Perhaps because Jon believes her, and Jon's foolish heart is usually right." Sansa turned to the south. "We will send our voices to Riverrun. One vote among many. I hope it will be enough." Moon by moon, kingdoms stirred. In the Reach, Lady Olenna's ghost seemed to hover over harvests thick with gold. Farmers blessed the Silver Queen who spared them famine. In the Vale, Lord Robin Arryn, coached by an exasperated Ser Davos, practiced speeches on governance instead of falconry. In the Riverlands, Edmure Tully polished his sword and his rhetoric both, determined to prove his years in Lannister dungeons had sharpened, not dulled, his resolve. All the while, Daenerys traveled the realm with scant retinue, visiting holdfasts scarred by war. She walked among miners in the Stormlands who chipped black dragonglass from caves. She knelt beside orphan girls in Maidenpool, teaching them Valyrian lullabies Missandei once hummed. She listened. For the first time since Cartha's illusions, she simply listened. Jon remained at her side, though whispers persisted of the true lineage that made him her nephew, and rightful heir to Aegon's crown. The Northmen knew, yet said little. Each sunrise they watched the two ride side by side, and some saw doom, others saw unity. All waited. On the first day of the 6th moon, banners filled Riverrun's green banks like autumn leaves. Tents sprouted in orderly rings, each colored, each proud. Inside the great hall, a circle of chairs faced an empty dais. No iron throne, no swords, only polished riverstone. Tyrion stood at the center, flanked by Samwell Tarly, chosen as Maester Scribe by near unanimous consent, and Brienne of Tarth, sworn to keep the peace of the hall. Daenerys arrived last. She wore a simple black gown edged in red silk, a dragon in nothing but metaphor. Jon escorted her, cloaked in direwolf gray, sword at hip. Murmurs rose like wind through wheat. Tyrion banged his staff. "Let history mark this council. Let every voice be heard." One by one, lords rose to speak. Jon Royce for the Vale, Edmure for the Riverlands, Yara for the Iron Islands, Gendry for the Stormlands, Sam for House Tarly and the Reach's small folk, Arya representing no house but the realm of the free. Sansa stood for the north. Cersei, unexpected, strode forward for the Crownlands, unarmed except for tongue sharp as Valyrian steel. Arguments blazed, cooled, blazed again. Some lords argued for houses, others for merit. Gendry named Arya Stark, blushing as he did. Yara named herself, and half the hall laughed until she reminded them no man had sailed a black tide as she had. Sansa named Tyrion, to the dwarf's visible shock. Samwell proposed a democracy, briefly, until laughter toppled the notion like a clumsy calf. Finally, Daenerys rose. Her voice was neither loud nor pleading. "I came to Westeros to claim my birthright, but found a burden greater than crowns. The soul of a people shattered by war. I would mend it, not as conqueror but as servant. Yet I have known fire all my life. Some part of me will always long for flame. A ruler must be more than longing. She glanced toward Jon. I do not name myself. Murmurs surged anew. Jon looked stricken, but she gestured him to stillness. Cersei rose. Strange that the dragon girl shows restraint while she exhaled, gathering words like blades. I have tasted power and found it bitter. I have lost husband, father, children, all to thrones. I will not sit another. Silence spread wider than the hall. Tyrion whispered, almost to himself. Then who? Sansa stepped forward. We need someone who knows the cost of the wall, of Dragonfire, of treason and duty. Someone who never wanted a throne. Her eyes found Jon. Jon's face went pale as frost. No. Arya's smile was small. Duty is the death of love, brother. But sometimes it's also its proof. Gendry nodded. Yara shrugged. Edmure opened his mouth, then closed it. One by one, lords inclined heads. Daenerys watched, heart tightening. Not with envy, but with a fierce, sudden clarity. This was the wheel broken not by flame, but by choice. She took a measured breath. If the council wills it, I will guide him as hand, she said, and leave dragons to skies far from your cities. Tyrion's staff echoed. All in favor of Jon Snow, born Aegon Targaryen, raised a stark, raise your hands. Hands lifted like birds at sunrise. Some trembling, some swift. Enough, Jon swallowed. I accept if my queen commands it. Daenerys met his gaze. Rule them, Jon. Her voice was soft. Rule them better than any dragon could. The coronation was simple. A circlet of river steel, forged by Gendry, placed upon Jon's dark curls. No dragonfire, no wildfire. Only cheers that rolled across Riverrun like spring thunder. Daenerys stood at his right hand, hair loose in sea wind. Cersei watched from the back, face unreadable. That night, a feast blazed beneath painted banners. Wine flowed, songs rose. Tyrion told jokes terrible enough to make Sansa cover her smile. Brienne danced with Podrick. Arya vanished before dessert, likely already on the road to adventures south. Grey Worm toasted Th. Ye fallen of Winterfell. Jon drank slowly, eyes heavy with future burdens. When moon was high, Daenerys climbed onto Drogon one last time upon Riverrun's east bank. Jon approached, alone. Where will you go? He asked. East, she said. Back to Meereen, perhaps. There are still chains to break. She ran a palm along Drogon's warm scales. And when the realm is truly at peace, maybe your small council will invite dragons home as allies, not weapons. Jon nodded. You will always have a home here. She kissed him, swift, bittersweet. Break no more vows, she whispered. The realm needs a king who keeps them. With a roar, Drogon launched skyward, regal and Viserion rising behind him. The three shadows swept across the moon, then angled east, wings threshing stars. In their wake, banners fluttered, and a new king stood upon grass wet with dragon wind, watching until dawn burned the last trace of their silhouettes from the sky. Years later, small folk would tell children of the day dragons spared King's Landing, not by mercy alone, but by the courage of a queen who chose words over fire, and of a realm that for once listened. They would say dragons vanished beyond sunrise, yet their echoes, the hope they carried, lingered in the laughter of streets rebuilt with piece-shaped stones. And some would dream that someday, beneath gentle skies, the wheel would never turn again. The sun climbed slow and pale over Riverrun's misted banks on the first morning of Jon's reign, and the damp fields whispered like 1,000 hushes as banners were struck and tents folded into neat squares. Jon found himself awake before the cockcrow, pacing the keep's inner yard with Ghost padding at his heel. Dawn's washed-out light turned the direwolf's coat to something almost silvery, and when Jon rested a gauntlet hand upon the creature's neck, he felt the steady patience of an animal who had crossed snows, wars, and death itself to remain at his side. That constancy anchored him more firmly than any crown. Tyrion emerged from the great hall's side door, hair a wild shock after a sleepless night spent drafting charters. A pair of ink-blotted parchments fluttered under one arm, and his other hand clutched a heel of bread. "Your Grace," he said, trying the honorific like a cobbler testing new leather. "If ruling keeps us from sleep, perhaps we should petition the maesters to shorten the nights." Jon grunted. Humor felt distant. "How many lords remain?" "Enough to populate 3 small councils and quarrel for 6, Tyrion answered, mouth full of bread. "Edmure insists we issue pardons before noon. Yara wants shipping tariffs lifted yesterday. And Gendry, 7 help him, has devised a new hammer that smelts or faster, if granted royal funds." Jon almost smiled. The sheer normality of these concerns after years of terror felt unreal. He ran fingers through his hair, still tangled from restless turning. "Let them rest a day. We march for King's Landing tomorrow. The city must see its king." "It must," Tyrion agreed, lowering his voice. "But word travels faster than ravens. Pockets of Lannister loyalists linger in the capital. They whisper that the North will rule by sword. We do well to arrive with wagons of grain and a healer's train, not unsheathed steel." Jon lifted Ghost's muzzle, meeting the wolf's steady gaze. "Then we bring grain. Davos can have Storm's End send half its stores downriver. If the city eats, it may listen." Tyrion nodded, scribbling across a margin. "Ser Davos is already master of ships in all but name. I'll give him the seal and quill. Now Sam is packing the Citadel's broadest volumes. He thinks to rebuild the royal library that fire consumed during Aerys's purges." "Good," Jon said. "A realm forgets truth when books burn." "And Brienne?" Tyrion asked. "She rides north to escort Sansa to King's Landing," Jon replied. "I want the North's voice raised beside mine." "That," said Tyrion, "will unsettle those whispering you were dragon scales beneath your cloak." He flicked parchment. "We'll announce a council of lords and commons both. A king who invites butcher and brewer to speak may earn another sword length of patience." Jon exhaled. Patience felt fragile as frost on a late spring leaf. But he would try. By the time the royal host set out, summer storms had broken above the Trident. Mud sucked at wagon wheels, and Ghost trotted ahead, splashed to the belly in brown slush. Davos commandeered a flotilla of flat-bottomed craft that poled along swollen canals, each stacked high with burlap sacks stamped by Gendry's smiths. A crown stag, black on gold, signifying Storm's End grain gift. Peasants lining the banks doffed caps and bowed. Some dared wave. Children shouted for the wolf, and Ghost, huffing, slowed to sniff outstretched palms. Tyrion, riding a shaggy riverland's gelding, observed everything with bright, sleepless eyes. Every village well kept, every broken mill wheel, each field where scarecrows leaned over green shoots. He jotted notes, muttered to himself. At night around campfires he unrolled maps, quiz-testing junior stewards until they begged for rest. Samwell Tarly traveled in a lumbering cart repurposed from siege equipment, now filled with chests of books strapped tight to keep them from sodden ground. He pored over vellum by lantern glow, muttering citations until his voice cracked. Gilly rode beside him with young little Sam bundled in furs, humming lullabies older than the wall. The Unsullied marched as honor guard, Grey Worm at their head. Yet their spears angled back, points down in sign of guardianship, not conquest. Many bore tiny leather pouches tied to their belts, seeds gathered from fields they passed. When asked, Grey Worm explained simply, "We plant when war is done." The phrase traveled the campfires, repeated like a vow. Jon spent long hours on his destrier's back, eyes on the far horizon where lightning sometimes flickered behind distant clouds. Once he glimpsed a crimson wing far above, receding eastward, perhaps regal or Viserion hunting mid-migration. A pang of loss tugged at him that surprised him with its depth. He had never truly mastered those dragons, yet their presence during the longest night had felt like a promise that mankind could call on fire without succumbing to it. Now that power flew beyond his reach, beyond Westeros altogether, carried by Daenerys toward a future he could not see. He reminded himself she had chosen that path, just as he had chosen this one. Still, he missed her laughter in the quiet moments between decisions, when burdens pressed deepest. Their procession reached the King's Road, where it bent past the ruined inn at the crossroads. The building's stones were blackened from some forgotten skirmish. Moss draped the collapsed roof beams. Jon ordered a rest, and while horses watered, he dismounted to examine the charred timbers. A local woman approached, gray-haired, back-bowed, but eyes sharp. "My lord," she said, mistaking rank. "We used to call this the Bell Inn, for the bronze bell that hung over the door. It rang for travelers, no matter their purse. When the war came, Sel's words set it alight to smoke out a band of orphans hiding inside. 7 little ones, all gone." Her voice did not tremble. Grief had worn itself smooth in her. Jon crouched, picking soot-coated rubble, and discovered a small warped bell half buried in ash. The clapper rattled but produced no sound. He pressed it into the woman's hands. "Will you ring it again when the building stands anew?" She stared at the silent metal, tears beating. "I will, your grace." "Then rebuild," he told her. "Stone masons from King's Landing will come within the month. Tell them the king commands it." She bowed until her forehead touched muddy earth. Word of that encounter raced ahead of them on rumor's wings. King's Landing appeared on the 12th day. Red walls streaked black from old fires, the visible ribs of the city's wounds. The gatehouse banners had been stripped of lions. Instead, white cloth hung blank, awaiting new colors. Crowds massed along the street of steel, lining route to the Great September's empty yard. Now an open scar ringed by tumbled marble. The people expected armored columns and thundering hooves. What they saw were grain carts, healers bearing satchels of poppy and comfrey, and unsullied distributing bread that steamed despite cooling embers within portable ovens. Jon rode at the forefront, wearing plain brigandine over quilted leather. No crown framed his dark curls. The circlet traveled in Davos's saddlebag until the realm felt safe enough to accept it. Ghost trotted by the left stirrup, drawing fascinated squeals from children perched atop broken walls. Jon dismounted before the September yard's jagged foundation and knelt, pressing a palm to shattered stone. He whispered a stark prayer for the dead. First for those consumed by Cersei's wildfire, then for men and women scorched by dragons a mere breath from falling. His humility disarmed even the grimmest faces in the crowd. Inside the Red Keep, silence reigned where schemers once traded secrets. The Iron Throne still stood in the echoing hall, twisted swords gleaming dimly. Jon approached it that first dusk alone save for Tyrion. He ran fingertips across cold metal. "Some men sought this all their lives," he murmured, "and lost souls to see it filled." Tyrion's reflection glimmered in a dulled blade. "A good reason to rule from a council chamber, not a throne room." "Then melt it," Jon said, surprising himself. Tyrion blinked. "Melt the Iron Throne? Turn the swords into plowshares or bridge girders," Jon answered. "Let the realm remember every field watered by blood, and let it choose to use those swords for harvest, not war." The dwarf tilted his head, considering. Symbolism that large could anger houses who see the throne as legacy. "Legacy's weight crushed the realm," Jon replied. "It's past time we shed it." Tyrion smiled, faint but proud. "I'll send for masons trained in Valyrian steel salvage. The throne will become beams and bolts, perhaps the grandest library Westeros has ever known." The first session of Jon's small council convened 1 week later in a repurposed audience chamber cleared of tattered tapestries. Davos presided over a maritime-stained map of the Narrow Sea. Sam sat behind stacked ledgers. Sansa, newly arrived, took the seat opposite Jon, hair glowing copper in lamplight. Gendry, hammer slung over one shoulder, leaned against the back wall until Tyrion forced him into a chair with a mutter about manners. Brienne stood near the door, commander of the Kingsguard Reborn. 4 knights in burnished armor remained from the war, and she intended to recruit more for skill rather than lineage. Podrick was one such candidate, quietly proud in new white cloak. Scribes recorded proceedings on fresh parchment. The First Order, repeal of debtor prisons for small folk, replaced by labor bonds redeemable through public works. Gendry and Davos argued details. Sam produced precedent from pre-conquest Old Town merchant codes. Sansa proposed regional grain banks managed by septas and maesters, insulated from lordly levy. Tyrion drafted charters overnight, quills scratching until dawn reddened parchments like sleepy eyes. Outside council walls, King's Landing's markets reopened. The smell of fried lamprey and honey cake mingled once more with Tanner's lime. The Crownlands harvest, bolstered by Storm's End grain, flowed into bakeries. Jon walked incognito through alleys at dusk, Ghost pacing behind. He overheard talk of Snow's justice and the Silver Queen who spared us. Some cursed dragons, still haunted by wings that never descended. Others blessed them for staying skyborn. One evening he found graffiti on a blackened alley wall. A chalk wolf and dragon curled together, above the words "We live." He touched the crude chalk lines. Unaware Brienne watched from shadowed archway, a faint smile on her scarred lips. Far across the narrow sea, dawn gilded the amber domes of Meereen as Daenerys rode through great pyramid corridors that once rang with the clangor of harpy rebels. Now they hummed with quieter industry. Former slaves hammered bronze into irrigation pipework. Unsullied taught literacy in shaded courtyards. She moved among them with Drogon's absence keen as phantom limb. For her eldest child hunted volcanic peaks on the Isle of Cedars with his brothers, beyond sight. She had grounded them to assuage the fear of city folk who remembered flaming skies. In their place she relied on her voice, finding its power no less fierce. A delegation from Volantis awaited in the throne chamber. A triarch pair garbed in orange silk, escorted by sellswords bearing prism shields. They bowed stiffly. Never before had old Volantis bowed to a foreign queen. The Triarchus spoke of trade routes bleeding profit to Karth pirates, offered fleets in exchange for exclusive rights to Meereen's new glassworks. Daenerys listened, memory drifting to merchant princes who once bartered for her dragons with scorn. She countered with demands: equal tariffs, abolition of slave pens along Black Cliffs, and guarantee of safe passage for refugee ships fleeing wars in the Summer Isles. The taller Triarch balked, amber bangles chiming indignantly. Such reforms strike at the very foundation of Volantene prosperity. Daenerys met his gaze without blinking. Then Volantis must choose whether prosperity rests on chains or on partnership. Westeros chose. So did Meereen. The envoy asked for 3 days' consideration. She granted 2. After they departed, Missandei's absence echoed like a cold draft across the hall. Daenerys closed her eyes, remembering the translator's warm smile, her gentle coaxing toward mercy. In Missandei's stead, she leaned on Grey Worm's concise counsel, direct as spear thrust. He stood by a painted pillar, chin lifted. "Volantis will see profit," he said. "Your dragons may be far, but stories of King's Landing still spread. Fire unseen can still burn." Daenerys half smiled. "I've begun to understand another kind of fire." She glanced at parchment stacked on an ebony table. Letters from Tyrion, coded in ciphers once used by slave catchers but now repurposed for peace. They spoke of Jon's library, of melted swords, of Sansa's grain banks. They ended with 4 words that warmed her more than any hearth. "The realm remembers you." She walked to a balcony. Below, the city buzzed, not with fear, but with commerce. She inhaled sea wind tinged by distant pepper markets, and for a rare moment the ache of exile lifted. She was not gone from the world that needed her. She had merely shifted her vantage. In the Reach, where sunflowers nodded in golden seas, word of the Silver Queen's bargain rippled south through vassal halls. Lady Illyria Hightower, regent of Old Town, penned treatises praising the flower-crowned charter that redistributed tithes toward orphanages. The Citadel's archmesters grumbled, but Sam's former mentors among the scribes applauded, sending boxes of sealed scroll copies north along the Rose Road for Jon's libraries. Yet not all hearts softened. In the burn-scarred hinterlands east of King's Landing, a loose company of former gold cloaks coalesced around a grizzled sergeant named Sarsfield. They called themselves the Red Manticore, kept hidden scorpions, and stockpiled wildfire casks stolen under Cersei's rule. Their aim: restore a true Lannister heir by force. Never mind that no such heir stepped forward. They thrived on rumor and fear, seeding pamphlets that claimed dragons would return to burn the city once Jon's Northmen turned against him. Tyrion learned of the Manticore from a petty smuggler caught fencing stolen Septon chalices. He presented the intelligence at council. "Rebellion in embryo," he said, fueled by dislocation and hunger for simpler times when fear made life predictable. Sansa proposed infiltration rather than open battle. "Cut the lie from within," she urged. Brienne volunteered to lead a covert band of knights disguised as sellswords, with Podrick at her side. Jon agreed, but insisted no wildfire store be left intact. "Not another September of Baelor," he said. The covert ride left King's Landing under moonless sky, disappearing into the Kingswood. Cersei Lannister watched these developments from Casterly Rock's sea-blown heights. She had arrived weeks earlier beside Jaime, traveling under truce banners and escorted by a mixed guard of Lannister loyalists and Stark riders commanded by a taciturn archer named Ser Hallis Malin. The twins occupied what rooms remained habitable. Much of the rock was hollowed by years of neglect, mines exhausted, garrison unpaid. Cersei walked echoing halls listening to waves boom below. Freedom tasted brackish, laced with old humiliations. Yet each morning she found her chest rose easier. Jaime spent hours drilling with young recruits, teaching shield blocks with one hand, parry motions with the gold limb. Evenings they dined in a modest chamber where childhood murals of robed lions hunting stags stretched across faded plaster. They spoke little of thrones or dragons. Instead they spoke of Tommen's gentle smile, of Myrcella's laughter amid Dornish fountains, of Joffrey's first archery shot that struck Cersei's sleeve rather than target. Grief gentled them like waves smoothing shoreline stones. One dawn, a raven arrived bearing an invitation. Attend King's Landing to witness the founding of a new court of grievance, open to all. Jaime read it, brow furrowed. Tyrion's quills again. Cersei pressed seal wax between thumb and forefinger, studying the Lannister lion engraved. "It seems he wishes to bind my hands with good deeds. Each chain a ribbon, bright enough for the crowd." "Not bind," Jaime said quietly. "Perhaps he hopes you'll help." Help. The word felt foreign. She paced to a window slit that looked over sea cliffs, breathing salt spray. "I will go," she said at last. Jaime's eyes widened. Whether in relief or dread, she couldn't tell. Through summer's heart, the realm settled into a tense peace. Farmers coaxed barley from fields turned by decades of hoofbeats. Masons rebuilt roadside inns, their hammers ringing like small bells. The Manticore threat loomed quiet until Brienne's riders located their hideout in old stone granaries near Duskendale Cliffs. Under cover of a seaside storm, she and Podrick breached the storehouse, extinguishing wildfire casks with sand and seawater. During the fray, Podrick saved her from a crossbow bolt, taking a cut along his arm. Brienne bounded herself, voice trembling once more between commander's bark and mother's fret. They marched captives back to King's Landing in chains fashioned from melted throne swords. Their arrival coincided with the city's first harvest fair since the war. Colorful awnings sprouted in the dragon pit's cleared yard, now leveled and seeded with grass. Children chased geese between stalls selling candied plums. Musicians plucked lutes tuned with new-gut strings imported from Bravos. Jon strode among them wearing simple wool, no crown, ghost weaving a head nose first toward meat pie scents. Merchants hailed him as Snow King. He purchased honey cakes for orphans gathered near a tanner's booth and left with empty purse but lighter heart. That evening, council reconvened in the refurbished Tower of the Hand. A modest marble structure Tyrion insisted was safer than the collapsed old redoubt because fewer secrets dwell in fresh mortar. Sam presented a bound draft titled The Charter of People's Rights. He cleared his throat, cheeks flushed. It records protections for trial by peers, abolition of forced marriage contracts for children, and codify. Yes, a lord's duty of welfare in famine. Copy will be scribed in each major holdfast. Jon read sections aloud. As words fell into hushed hall, He saw in Sansa's eyes echoes of their father's honesty. She nodded at passages, amended phrasing where heedless idealism met hard practicality. When they finished, Tyrion rose, raising goblet. May the wheel groan under this weight of parchment until it can bear us aloft instead of grinding us beneath. They drank, ink-stained and weary. Letters from Daenerys arrived on swift gull-winged corsairs. News of Volantis abolishing chain markets, of a new alliance between Meereen and Astapor shipping grain to Westeros. She wrote of Rhaegal nesting on smoking cliffs of Valyria, of Drogon patrolling ghostly ruins with watchful eye against treasure hunters seeking cursed steel. She ended one letter with a line that made Jon still. When you have time, send maesters to study Valyrian stoneworking. There are secrets here that could reforge bridges across the world. He shared the letter with Sam, who near fainted at promise of lost knowledge. Plans brewed for an expedition. Tyrion calculated costs. Sansa suggested archiving copies at Winterfell to ensure no flood or fire destroyed history twice. Jon realized the realm had begun to look outward, beyond survival, toward discovery. That aspiration felt novel as spring's first crocus after a century of ice. Winterfell's courtyards bustled with trade again. Asha Greyjoy sailed upriver with holds of smoked fish and ironwood beams, bargaining with northern artisans for furs. She met Bran beneath the weirwood's bleeding canopy, leaving offerings of seashell necklaces on gnarled roots. Bran, ever quiet, listened to whispers carried on raven's wings. One twilight he warged into wintering geese and soared above the shivering sea, glimpsing icebergs calving shards like cracked quartz. In their mirror-polished faces, he foresaw seasons shifting unpredictable as dice. He sent a vision south, storms brewing harsher, summers shorter. Climate would test the fragile peace. He urged Jon to establish granaries along every major trade road and commission wind-reading towers. Jon listened, mind echoing with lessons learned on the wall. Even in peace, vigilance must not sleep. By autumn's first chill, the new Court of Grievance convened inside the vaulted shell of the restored September Yard, now roofed in stained glass shards salvaged from ruins. Arranged in abstract sunbursts of blue and gold, artisans dared not recreate the faith's official sigils. Instead, they crafted a secular hall of lights where color shards danced across stone. Cersei, clad in a plain crimson gown absent golden embroidery, arrived under escort but unshackled. Gasps rippled through benches as she walked to a witness dais. Tyrion, presiding as hand, introduced her as Lady Cersei of House Lannister, voice for orphans and widows of the Crownlands. Some jeered, others leaned forward in curiosity. She met their stares head high. When a farmer complained his lord withheld seed grain promised for next planting, Cersei spoke. A crown's duty is to ensure stewardship. If lords hoard, the realm starves. I recommend levy of their summer wine stores until debt is paid. The hall murmured approval. The farmer bowed, tears brimming. Tyrion kept expression neutral, but later that night he climbed the rock's narrow staircase to her chambers and left a single white rose, Mercy's first bloom, on her threshold. Brienne's capture of the Red Manticore prisoners led to a public hearing. Rather than executions, Jon offered them penance. Service rebuilding the Bell Inn and labor dredging wildfire residue from Blackwater's seabed. 3 accepted, heads bowed. The 4th spat and swore the dragons would return to finish what they started. Jon sentenced him to the wall, no longer a military order, but a frontier of learning where remaining knights watch brothers guided scholars cataloging magical relics buried in ice. Exile to knowledge rather than death. That night, Jon dreamed of the wall, towering blue-white under starry north. But instead of haunted forest beyond, he saw green fields, sheep rivers, and children splashing in thaw-formed pools. When he woke, he realized the dream was not prophecy but a wish, a future the wall's melting could birth, if guided. He resolved to journey north come spring, see the Watch's transformation firsthand, and speak with Bran about the world's bones shifting. Months slipped onward. A comet flared across skies one clear night over King's Landing, tail red as wildfire. Old women murmured it was Lannister flame. Sailors said a dragon's breath. Maesters logged it, predicting little. To Jon, It appeared as the ghost of all swords melted and reforged in hearts rather than forges. He watched from the Red Keep's highest balcony until dawn bleached its trail. The following day, Daenerys' latest raven arrived in a rush. Her handwriting sharper than usual. Discovered living dragon eggs in the smoking spire caves. Hatchlings soon. A clutch of 5 scales pale pearl. If they live, they will imprint on first songs they hear. I remember Tyrion's old tale that early Valyrians sang to eggs with pipes of bone. Send me your realm's sweetest minstrels, if you can spare them. The future may depend on what these dragons learn of men. Jon read the letter aloud to council. Silence followed, heavy as dawn fog. At length Sansa breathed, 5 new dragons. The world will change again. Tyrion drummed fingers, eyes shining. A realm founded on choice now faces power ancient as doom itself. If they learn peace, they may light furnaces that forge plows, not spears. If they learn war, our parchment shields will crumble. Sam licked dry lips. Then we must ensure the right songs reach them. Jon met each gaze. We will send singers, those who know ballads of mercy, of harvest, of oaths kept, and scribes with histories of our mistakes, so they hatch amid caution. Davos chuckled. Imagine a hatchling listening to my sea shanties about drunken mermen stealing anchor chains. It may teach them humor, Tyrion said, raising brow. And that is a rare armor. Plans unfurled. A delegation of bards, maesters, and craftsmen volunteered for the voyage east. Gendry began forging steel shipping crates vented to air but strong enough to deter would-be thieves. Cersei surprised all by offering a chest of Lannister gold to finance ship outfitting. Consider it repayment for past debts, she said, voice almost brittle. Tyrion only nodded, understanding deeper currents left unspoken. Winter's winds howled sooner than expected. Bran's warnings proved true. Snowflakes drifted over King's Landing in gentle flurries come mid-harvest. Small folk marveled. Some recoiled in fear, remembering last winter's dead armies. Jon ordered braziers installed along street crossings, free firewood stacked at sept doorways. Ghost leapt, snapping at flakes with playful growl, children giggling as they tossed handfuls his way. In the keep's solar, Jon met Sansa before a roaring hearth. She read a letter-bearing House Manderley seal. White Harbor fishery yields had doubled thanks to new nets financed by Crown Grain Bank loans. Sailors praised the king, but credited the Lady of Winterfell for brokering trust. Your north prospers more each month, Jon said. Our north, she corrected softly. She placed parchment aside. Yet not without cost to you. I see the wear in your eyes. He shrugged. Sleeping less grows easier with practice. Sansa's smile was knowing. You forget I stitched those eyes shut once, to keep you from staring at Ghost all night. He laughed. The memory of childhood warmth filled the room. Fire cracked, sending sparks upward. Outside, bells tolled 7th hour. Sansa's expression sobered. Winter's bite will test the people's resolve. But they look to you and see an honest man. That matters more than dragons. Jon sighed, glancing toward darkened panes. Sometimes I wonder if honesty can survive politics. It can, she answered. If shepherded, and if betrayed, rebuild it. You taught me that. He clasped her hand, thankful. The expedition east sailed on the galleon Dawnflame, hull freshly caulked and painted with intertwined wolf and dragon. Asha captained, eager for adventure beyond trade routes. The manifest included 4 bards, 1 Dornish, 2 reachmen, a Free City harpist, armed with songs of lullaby and lore, 3 maesters bearing tome copies, a septon versed in compassionate catechism, and 2 blacksmiths with bells tuned to pentatonic scales. Jon stood on the quay as sails unfurled, Ghost at his knee, Sansa beside him. He watched until the mast tips vanished into sunrise, feeling as though some piece of his heart stretched across waves. Tyrion appeared, breath puffing white. Rare sight, he mused. What? Jon asked. Hope made into convoy, Tyrion said. We used to ship swords to war. Now we ship songs to eggs. Jon managed a smile. Let's pray eggs prefer lullabies to iron. "Either way," Tyrion replied, "we must keep forging peace note by note." News from Meereen mid-voyage. One egg cracked, revealing a hatchling the color of dawn clouds tinged lavender. Daenerys named it Ilynrin, Old Valyrian for Dawnwing. It chirped at harp chords, nuzzling minstrels. Grey Worm described in letter how the little dragon sneezed sparks that set a parchment ablaze. They quickly built a sand floor for safety. 5 days later, the second egg hatched, emerald-scaled child answering to piping flute. The delegation's songs thrummed across ship decks, wind carrying fragments to passing dolphins who leapt beside Hull as though curious. Tyrion drafted ordinances for dragon emissary protocols should hatchlings visit Westeros. Sam began writing a compendium titled On the Rearing of Peacebred Dragons. Brienne added a training curriculum for City Watch contingencies, non-lethal smoke nets, reflective shields to dazzle without harm. Cersei, meanwhile, oversaw orphanage construction in the capital's west side, funded by seized Manticore assets. She insisted on stone courtyards where children could play under watchful eyes of nurses, and small libraries stocked with tales of knights who protected rather than conquered. Jaime visited daily, reading excerpts of The Hedge Knight to wide-eyed listeners. Rumors spread of the lioness's cubs, and for the first time since Tommen's reign, Cersei walked streets without fear of rotten fruit. Despite early snows, the Crownland's harvest held. Sacks of grain from Meereen arrived, exchanged for shipments of carved oak plows BSTF, Baratheon Stark Targaryen free, as branding. Jon oversaw ceremony dedicating the first rebuilt bridge over the Blackwater, forged partly from melted throne steel, partly from Reach iron. The bridge arch bore inscription in High Valyrian and Common: "Blades to bind, not break." On Inauguration Day, commoners thronged banks. Jon placed his hand on the steel rail. Ghost sniffed at rivets. Tyrion whispered, "I've never seen metal so symbolic and so practical in one span." Jon invited a baker's child to cross first, sending her scampering giggling from north to south bank. Cheers erupted, echoing across water. Bells that once told doom now sang renewal. Winter settled deeper, yet with storehouses ample, no child in King's Landing went to bed hungry that season. Fires burned in braziers along every square. Stews simmered communal. The small council met thrice weekly, debates fierce but respectful. Letters from Daenerys chronicled hatchlings thriving, each bonded to song. She requested lumber shipments for stable perches and scribes to copy Westerosi charters, hoping to adapt them for liberated cities along Slaver's Bay. Tyrion drafted responses, quills gleeful. One dawn, Jon walked ramparts above a city still dreaming. Snow clung to merlins soft as wool. He looked east, imagining dragons climbing sunrise. A gull soared overhead, feathers white as ghost's fur. In that hush, he felt no crown, no war, only simple awe that life, hammered thin by grief, could unfold into promise once more. Footsteps approached. Tyrion, cloaked in sable, breath frosting. He held a fresh raven scroll. "From Daenerys," he said, handing it over. Jon unrolled parchment. Only one line: "When spring flowers, fly to me. Together we will teach these children of flame to guard the gardens, not burn them." Jon exhaled mist and hope in equal measure. He stared toward dawning horizon, where pale gold-lit clouds, and beyond that, across seas, new dragons learned peaceful songs. He whispered to the wind, "I will come," and somewhere far east on lava-warmed cliffs, a hatchling lifted its head, as though hearing the echo of a promise riding dawn. Cold clung to King's Landing scarce 2 hours beyond midnight, breathing ragged through arrow slits and pooling in the long corridor outside the Royal Solar. The corridor's rushlights guttered in their iron sconces, and the wavering glow revealed Jon seated alone at the wide oaken table Tyrion had dragged from some forgotten storeroom to replace the old small council dais. Ghost dozed beneath the table, one red eye half open, twitching when frost rattled against a lattice window. Jon's crown lay beside an untouched flagon of arbor red. Ink stained his fingers dark. Parchment scraps littered the board like snowdrifts where the wind had crept through cracked mullions. He read and reread the latest raven from Daenerys, lips moving silently over each word. The parchment's wax seal, her three-headed dragon, had broken cleanly, as if the wax itself wished the message freed. She spoke of the hatchling songs deepening overnight, of Ilynrin testing wider wings in silent practice, of local fishermen glimpsing pearl scales glinting like dawn light on the tide. She wrote of a Volantine poet teaching the hatchlings cadence by reciting ballads of mercy in sonorous Valyrian beneath moonlight. She asked after the health of the city, the state of winter stores, Sansa's grain banks, Tyrion's library beams. And in a single line at the end written in lighter ink as if hurried by emotion, she confessed missing the sound of Jon's voice more than she had words to name. Ghost's ear flicked. Jon realized a tear had fallen onto the wolf's white paw. He closed his eyes, inhaled slow. Duty always, love rarely. Yet the two twined around him like dragon and wolf etched on the dawnflame's prow. He folded the letter, bound it with a fresh ribbon, and placed it atop the small pile to be archived by Sam. Then, with a groan of wood on stone, he pushed back the chair and rose. A soft knock sounded. Tyrion entered, scroll tube under one arm, hair wild. "Couldn't sleep," he said, stifling a yawn. "The bells keep chiming to mark night watches. Reminds me of the city's old habits, ringing fear into every hour. I thought we agreed to silence half of them." "They'll quiet come morning," Jon answered, voice rough. "The city watch still testing new patrol routes." Tyrion nodded, but his gaze slipped to the folded letter. "News from across the narrow sea?" Jon offered a faint smile. "Daenerys writes of hatchlings nearly flying." Tyrion's brows lifted. "Nearly, that word holds hope and peril both." He laid the tube on the table, unstoppered the cap, and drew forth blueprints. "Which is why I spend nights designing towers reinforced with dragonglass inlay. Not as weapons, think of them as roosts, perches if ever dragons choose to cross back west. High enough to keep tails clear of chimney smoke, low enough for stablemasters to hoist fresh carcasses. The masons will curse me, but innovation is rarely kind to backs." Jon traced the inked silhouettes. Graceful spires capped with iron rings for anchor chains, platforms wide as tournament rings. "We cannot assume the hatchlings will come." Tyrion shrugged. "But if they do, better we be ready to host, not repel. Hospitality is cheaper than war." The sentiment settled between them like a third chair. Jon found his shoulders eased. Tyrion poured 2 cups from the untouched flagon, slid one forward. "Tonight's too short for planning and too long for regret." They drank in silence, the wine's warmth slow to reach chilled bones. When the cup emptied, Tyrion gathered his diagrams. "I leave before dawn for the shipyards. Gendry has prototypes for pivot joint cranes. Care to join?" "Later," Jon said. "Ghost and I will walk the walls. Snow's lightest before sunrise." Tyrion offered a salute with rolled plans and wandered out, whistling off-key. Jon donned a fur-lined cloak, buckled long claw, and stepped into the courtyard. Stars shimmered brittle above, their edges sharpened by frost. The city lay hushed. No torchlight flickered beyond the riverside wards where fishermen mended nets. No cries rose from flea-bottom's alleys. Peace fragile as spun glass. Ghost padded ahead through new snow, nose casting steam. They ascended the bastion stairs, breath pluming. From the ramparts, Jon could see lanterns bobbing at River Gate where night carts hauled refuse toward compost marshes. He could sense, more than see, Brienne's rotating patrols tracing the periphery in ghostly arcs of lamplight. Halfway along the eastern parapet he stopped, struck by a primal inkling that something vast stirred beyond sight. He turned north. The wall, he knew, loomed hundreds of leagues away, now half the height remembered as melting eased. Yet tonight he felt its ancient hum as though the ice itself sighed, relieved of ancient burdens but wary of the new. Wind stiffened. Above, clouds parted like curtains unveiling a spectacle. Shimmering curtains of pale green fire, aurora strange to southern skies, rippling seaward. Jon's breath caught. He had seen such lights beyond the wall in deepest winter, but never so far south. Ghost whined, ears laid back. The lights pulsed, gentle but insistent, as though some cosmic drummer beat a rhythm only the sky heard. When Jon blinked, he saw fleeting shapes in the glow. Could have sworn one streamer resembled the outstretched neck of a dragon. Another, the elongated snout of a direwolf. He shook off fancy yet felt touched. A muffled sprint sounded behind. Bran Stark approached, wheeled swiftly by a steward. Only torch glow reflected on his still face, but his eyes glittered with knowledge. "The sky sings," he said, voice calm as still water. "It hasn't sung over these lands in 1,000 years." Jon knelt by the saddle chair. "Does it portend danger?" Bran's lips lifted in the faintest curve. "Change, brother. All portents warn and promise both." He turned gaze upward. "Magic stirs when dragons hatch. The world's pulse quickens. Old wards fray, new ones weave. It is neither good nor ill, only alive." Jon swallowed. "The wall melts faster than men expected. If storms deepen and harvests fail, then men must learn swifter than storms." Bran's voice warmed with what might be sympathy. "Kings cannot command tides, only build piers to ride them." He lifted a hand gloved against night. "You build. That is enough." Ghost sniffed Bran's gauntlet, then settled. Jon exhaled, a cloud of doubts dissipating. "You seldom leave Winterfell." "The realms converge," Bran replied. "North, south, east. Threads tighten. I must observe where they knot." He tilted his head, as though listening to some remote whisper. "A ship named Dawnflame rides heavy seas 3 days from Lys. Asha shouts orders. Bards sing to calm stomachs. The hatchlings hear across half a world. Song traveling along invisible lines. They will remember." Jon blinked. "You see them. I skim." Bran's smile glinted. "Wings stir waters and waters echo in birds. I hold the echo." Jon accepted the mystic explanation with weary ease. "Will they be safe? If men remain worthy of their trust." Bran's gaze slid to Jon's, intensity sudden. "Keep your word to them as you keep it to the lowliest fisher. Kings rise and fall, but oaths endure in scales and flame." Jon bowed head. "I swear." Lightning flickered far south, silent. The aurora faded like sigh. Bran's steward wheeled him back toward warmer halls. Jon remained, eyes adjusting to star-made dark. At sunup, Brienne rode in, plate silvered with frost, helm under arm. Podrick led prisoners, the last of the red manticore now subdued. Brienne dismounted stiffly. Blood darkened her sleeve. Jon met her at the gatehouse. "Crossbow bolt grazed," she said before he questioned. "Nothing Kingsguard cannot endure." Podrick flushed. "Dragged out the barb myself." "Pod saved 3 children during raid," Brienne added. "Your decree on wildfire search prevented a blast. We found 10 casks racked beneath floorboards. They'd planned to roll them downhill toward the grain quarter come spring festival." Jon's gut chilled. He placed a steady hand on Podrick's shoulder. "You have the realm's thanks." Pod ducked shyly. "Just doing duty, your grace." Brienne produced parchments, confessions, lists of exile supporters. Jon scanned, grim. More cells than expected. From minor riverlords to Sellsword captains nursing lost pay. He ordered discreet investigation, not mass arrests. "Root cause is hunger for old certainties," he said. "We must fill that hunger with vision before others exploit it." Later, in the great square bordering the Melted Sword Bridge, Jon convened an open forum, the first Assembly of Commons as drafted in Sam's charter. Any adult could speak so long as they queued orderly. Bakers spoke of charcoal shortages, potters of rising clay tariffs, hedge knights of lacking coin for winter fodder. Jon listened, scribes noted. Tyrion underlined solvable points. Sansa paired problems with potential sponsors. Gendry offered smith apprenticeships to out-of-work soldiers. Cersei, attending in plain travel cloak, pledged Lannister granaries surplus rye. Murmured surprise rippled, but claps followed. When the assembly adjourned under pale noon sun, Jon addressed them atop the bridge's midpoint, the melted sword beams shining. He spoke little, never comfortable with speeches, but his words carried. We broke blades to build this crossing. We will break injustice to build trust. Come spring thaw, I ride north to the wall, then east to Valyria to learn what new dragons can teach. Until then, this city governs together, lords and fisherfolk alike. He raised his arm, Ghost howled. The crowd answered in cheers layered with wonder and doubt but anchored by possibility. Deep winter settled, blanketing the realm as if the sky laid a white quilt over war-scarred earth. The Blackwater iced along shallow banks, though currents still flowed beneath. Grain caravans traversed hardened roads. Wolf packs roamed fields in search of game. Children built snow fortresses within the dragon pit's grassy bowl, shouting make-believe of dire wolves saving dragons from ice giants. In the Red Keep's west wing, Sam oversaw library construction. Shelves carved from cedar-lined halls warmed by radial hearths. Diagrams indicated ventilated floors to ward mold. Students from the Citadel arrived under escort, eager apprentices to record oral histories from small folk elders before time's silence swallowed them. Tyrion, passing with mug of mulled wine, remarked that perhaps the realm's greatest keepsake would be not dragons but memory itself. Cersei visited the library one chilly afternoon. She paused before a banner embroidered with three-headed dragon intertwined with stark wolf and crowned stag. Sam greeted her nervously, still unsure how to address the former queen. She touched the embroidery's threads, eyes distant. House Baratheon stands woven among symbols of peace. Robert would laugh or sulk, depending on mood. Sam managed a polite smile. Colors reflect new alliances. She studied him. You were once my cupbearer's tormentor, if rumor speaks true.
Sam swallowed.
I was many things I regret, my lady. Aren't we all? She turned away, trailing fingertips along rows where melted throne blades had been ground to slim braces reinforcing shelves. Swords holding books, poetic. She left without further word, cloak swishing. Sam exhaled, recording the encounter later as unexpected support for literary symbolism. Though he never quite understood its import, night after night, Jon dreamed of standing upon shards of ice that floated down a widening river. Each shard carried a different memory. Ygritte's laughter echoing among Frostfang peaks, Davos bowing on a wintry deck, Daenerys bathing in green sea light as hatchlings circled. He leapt from shard to shard, never falling. He told no one, but each dawn he woke more certain paths ahead would diverge like those icy flows, some to warm waters, some to crashing falls. The dream urged preparation. He issued decrees appointing Sansa regent during his northern journey, with Tyrion as steward of Crownland's trade. He named Brienne Lord Commander of the Queensguard, Cersei's suggestion, delivered with wry arch of brow, as the title fit Brienne's service to both queen and king. He established a bursary for orphan apprenticing, funded partially by Lannister gold, partially by tariffs on Myrish lace imports. Men muttered about taxation. Jon visited them, explaining coin flows until their grumbles eased into comprehension. The Dawn Flame reached Meereen's harbor under clear starlight late in the first month of the new year. Lanterns lined seawalls. Unsullied horns announced arrival. Dragons overhead loosed calls unlike any horn, harmonic, almost choral sounds. Asha's crew wept and laughed as 3 adult dragons wheeled above, silhouettes huge as storm clouds. Yet none dove, none breathed flame. They escorted. On the pier, Daenerys waited arrayed in flowing robe of blue and gold, hair braided with lapis beads. At her shoulder perched Ilynrin, eyes luminous amethyst, wings still dawn-speckled. The hatchling hummed at sight of the bards, who lifted flutes and harps to play fragments of the lullabies sung at sea. The little dragon flapped once, swirling dust, then settled, cooing. Daenerys welcomed the delegation, her smile bright yet sober. Song travels swift on ocean breath, she said. You arrive at a crucial hour. The clutch's third egg cracks. Its shell resists, as though fear of the unknown holds it within. The Dornish bard offered a clay ocarina shaped like a sand snake. We shall play until courage outsings doubt. Grey Worm oversaw unloading crates of scrolls, looms, and 4 casks of northern honey. Asha reported by Raven. Landing successful, dragons amiable, no sailors eaten. To which Tyrion pinned on council board with note, better than last envoy to Karth. Back in Westeros, Jon read the report beside Sam and Bran. Relief spread through him but quickly turned to logistic focus. He asked Bran whether the Aurora reappeared. Bran shook head. Quiet for now. Sam drafted new curricula. Cross-cultural dragon lore for maesters. Valyrian language classes for city scribes. Bardic exchange programs. Jon chuckled to realize the realm's next battle might be fought with verses and vowels. Midwinter thaw arrived prematurely. Rains washed away snow drifts. Crocus buds sprouted along walls. Fishermen hailed earlier spawn. Farmers feared false spring. Maesters predicted alternating freeze and thaw could ruin shoots. Jon convened council, inviting wise women from Riverlands who practiced Old Rhoynar flood farming. They proposed canal sluices to manage surges. Gendry forged lock gates. Laborers dug trenches. Refugees found employment. When seas swelled at Moon's End, the canals led runoff away, sparing fields. Crowd hailed Canal Queen Sansa, the title making her blush. Word came of unrest in Pentos. Magisters plotting to kidnap a hatchling for leverage. Daenerys wrote urgent plea. Their greed endangers all. Jon dispatched a missive to the Pentoshi Council, warning any harm to dragons would sever trade. He signed with seal of 3 houses. Cersei added a note referencing debts Pentos owed Lannisters. Sansa appended promise of northern tarred timber shipments so long as peace held. Combined pressure swayed Magisters. They issued apology and doubled rice exports to Meereen. That spring, Jon prepared to ride north. He met with Cersei atop the bridge at dusk. She gazed at River's dark mirror. The city no longer smells of smoke, she observed. Not of ash, at least, he agreed. I sometimes wake expecting bells tolling flame, she said, but hear only laughter. It is disorienting. You've helped bring it, Jon said. She arched a brow. Redemption interests me less than relevance. Yet, she trailed off. When you find the wall melting, will you rebuild it? Not the same, Jon answered. Maybe we'll plant forests where it once cast shadow. Let new growth guard the realms of men. Ever the dreamer, she murmured, but not cruelly. She extended a crimson-gloved hand. He shook it, noting the strength in her grip. Return alive, she said. The realm bets heavily on your perseverance. The king's retinue set forth. Jon, Ghost, Bran, Sam, Davos, Brienne, Podrick, and a column of 20 guards. Through Riverlands now greening, they passed orphans in rebuilt of stone. The bronze bell hung again. It rang farewell as they crossed. Northward they climbed the King's Road. Small folk lined fences to gift bread, salt, coarse wool mittens. Bran narrated histories when passing Weirwoods, telling of faces carved by children of the forest. Sam scribbled notes, cheeks ruddy with excitement. In White Harbor, they boarded longships to sail along coast, quicker than muddy spring roads. Sea spray stung. Ghost chased dolphins leaping alongside. Bran dreamed beneath decks, his visions guiding routes safe from hidden shoals. At Castle Black, survivors of the Watch greeted Jon with tentative cheers. Gilly's child ran to Sam. The wall stood formidable still yet pockmarked by melt channels trickling water into gullies. Jon laid palm to ice, its high sharp chill tempered by undercurrent of surrender. He addressed the brothers. You kept watch when the dead marched. Now you guard a bridge to tomorrow. Teach those who come north to respect graves, not rob them. He spent days conferring with scholars excavating ruins beyond. They found obsidian blades, carved horn fragments, and a stone tablet depicting a man and dragon standing beside Weirwood Tree, hands linked. Jon studied it long. Bran ventured beyond in warged dreams, finding no undead, but whispers of remnant magic swirling like smoke. He told Jon the land itself healed. On the 9th dawn, torches lined the wall's top. Jon climbed ancient steps, ghost padding. He stared over endless white plain now studded with green shoots. He felt the realm's breath flow through him. South ships building bridges, east hatchlings singing, north snows yielding to seeds. He lifted Longclaw not in challenge but salute. Brienne knelt and Pod followed. Davos grinned, wind whipping beard. Sam placed a hand to his chest. Bran's eyes shone pale blue, reflecting aurora faint on horizon. Jon sheathed the blade. "Time to sail east," he said. They returned south to White Harbor and boarded the sleek Carrick Wind's Grace, captained by a woman from Tyrosh who claimed to have seen Merling's dance. Cargo: scrolls, seeds, carved weirwood trinkets for barter. The voyage across narrow sea took 10 days. Ghost paced decks, learning balance. Bran dreamt crows to guide them through fog. Sam taught sailors runic letters. Brienne and Pod sparred at bow, wooden swords clacking. On dawn of the 11th day, smoke plumes of Meereen's salt fires marked landfall. Dragons soared greeting. Drogon, vast and dark. Regal, emerald gleam. Viserion, moon white. Beside them 3 smaller forms darted, wings beating eager. Ilynrin, Casaros the green hatchling, and the latest Nyhex, scales pale gold, hatched after music of Northman horn. Jon stepped onto Meereen's pier, ghost at heel. Daenerys waited. When their eyes met, wind stilled. She walked forward, cloak billowing, Ilynrin gliding overhead. Jon crossed half the pier in stride. They met midway. Neither spoke at first. Their hands found each other. The world fell silent but for tide hush. Daenerys cupped his cheek. "You came. I said I would," he answered, voice ragged. She kissed him then, gentle but certain, as dragons circled above, singing echoes of flutes and wolves. When they parted, tears shone unshed. "You have changed," she whispered, noting lines by his eyes shaped by responsibility. "So have you," he replied, seeing serenity behind her strength. They walked side by side through torchlit streets. Freedmen cheered Azante's Hadar, wingless flame, title given to Daenerys since she kept dragons aloft while she ruled by voice. She guided Jon to the Great Pyramid's roof terrace, overlooking sea and desert. The hatchlings perched along carved balustrades, curious. Sam, Davos, and others arrived, gaping at view. Bards from Dawnflame sat cross-legged, plucking string melodies. Grey worms saluted, unsullied lined parapets. Daenerys gestured to horizon where volcanic silhouettes smoked. "Valyria lies there. The hatchlings will migrate when strong. But first they must learn of men, of choices." Jon nodded. "We teach them trust by living it." He turned to group. "Let Council of Two Realms begin." They convened that evening in a hall where Meereenese mosaics met Westerosi banners. Topics ranged: exchange of scholars, joint relief fleets for summer isles ravaged by storms, forging of diplomatic code in High Valyrian and Common. Bran, speaking seldom, suggested establishing weirwood groves in Essos to strengthen cross-continental greenways, easing communication. Daenerys considered with awe. Night deepened. Dragons slumbered across terrace. Hatchlings curled beneath elder wings. Tyrion's absence felt, but his diagrams were present, delivered by Raven earlier, designs for global beacon towers to guide dragon flight safely across major ports. Jon and Daenerys retired to a quiet balcony. They spoke of the wall, of Aurora, of manticore plots foiled, of libraries rising. She listened to every detail of children building snow forts in Dragon Pit, smiling soft. She in turn described training Ilynrin to temper flame, rewarding calm control with harp notes. Described Volantis triarchs abandoning slave pens and converting them to orphan workshops. Described nights spent telling stories to hatchlings. Stories of Nymeria's 10,000 ships, of Bran the Builder, of Jon Snow rallying the living at Winterfell. Jon marveled. "You taught them we are capable of better than fear." "Fear builds walls," she replied. "But you showed me walls can melt into rivers that nourish." The moon climbed, painting sea silver. Ghosts snoozed, tail thumping when hatchling chirped. Ilynrin padded closer, sniffing Jon. He held still. The little dragon's breath warmed his face. It hummed low note. Somewhere below, bards mirrored with soft flute.
Jeune smiled, tentative.
It trusts, he whispered. Daenerys placed a steadying hand on Ilynrin's crest. Because you smell of snow and promise. They stargazed. Shooting streak traced sky. Daenerys pointed. A dragon's comet. They'd call it in Karth. Perhaps it heralds new age, Jon said. Ages are ink we write, she answered. She took his hand, guiding it to Ilynrin's scaled forehead. The hatchling trilled approval. Jon felt heartbeat quick, alive. Might I? He asked. Speak, she said. He looked at stars. Marry me, not for crown, those burdens we share, but for hope. Two halves of a promise to worlds apart. She exhaled surprise, then laughter soft as desert breeze. Yes, she said, but not as political act. We marry before gods and small folk, Northmen and freedmen. Under open sky, wing and wolf in witness. Jon's heart surged. Then so it will be. Preparations unfolded across seas. Ravens darted. In King's Landing, Tyrion nearly spilled ink upon hearing. He declared festival of 7 days. Sansa commissioned cloaks. Direwolf white trimmed with smolder red silk. Gendry forged matching rings. Valyrian steel threads around dragonglass cores. Word spread. Some lords fretted unions of powers. Others toasted unity. Small folk delighted at romance defying war's ashes. The faith of the Seven argued doctrine then sent blessed scroll affirming union so long as king honored each god. The Red Temple in Volantis prepared golden incense barges. Rhoynar water priests promised blessing of rivers. The ceremony would take place on Driftmark's Pearl Cliff, chosen for its midpoint between continents, with stepstones as railing illusions of bridging worlds. Corlys Velaryon offered high tide vantage. Dragons could perch upon basalt columns. Ships could anchor below. Spring's first magnolia blossoms opened as guests sailed. The sea dotted with masts bearing sigils of wolf, dragon, lion, kraken, trout, rose, falcon, sunspear, and the new emblem of book-crowned sword for the people's charter. Jon arrived aboard Wind's Grace, Daenerys upon Drogon, trailing newly flying hatchlings. When Drogon landed upon Wide Causeway, his wings folded like cathedral doors. People gasped yet did not flee. Grey Worm led unsullied lines flanking paths strewn with desert roses, and northern snowdrops kept chilled in clay boxes. Bards played interwoven harmonies. Northern horn, Valyrian flute, Dornish drum. Tyrion officiated, short stature on marble plinth making him visible. He cleared throat. We gather not to chain kingdoms together, but to free them from fear. He told of melted throne, of bridge beams, of dragons born to song. His words echoed against waves. Jon and Daenerys exchanged vows. Jon spoke of seeing her choose mercy above fire. Daenerys spoke of seeing him hold fast to honesty amid death. They pledged to guard the seed of hope each saw in the other. Rings slid onto fingers. Cheers arose. Ilynrin leapt, spiraling, releasing harmless blue spark that crackled like fireworks. At feast after, tables overflowed with Myrinese honeyed locusts and northern venison pies. Fishers from Sisterton traded jokes with Astapori freedmen. Sansa danced with Arya, who slipped away soon after with Gendry to watch hatchlings practice loops above waves. Cersei stood at edge, wine in hand, eyes softening as she regarded the couple greeting well-wishers. Jaime joined her, golden hand resting on railing. Redemption wears many gowns, he muttered. Cersei only sipped and managed a ghost of smile. Bran watched through Ravencrow perched high, content. As sun dipped, dragons lifted, 3 great and 3 small, forming circle above. Drogon roared, not of war but of celebration, and belched plume of vivid red flame skyward. In its glow sails glimmered, and faces below shone. Night deepened, but torches kept darkness at bay. Music rose, weaving into hush of surf. Jon and Daenerys stole away to stand upon cliff ledge overlooking moon-pebbled water. Ghost lay nearby, hatchlings perched near rocks, lulled by waves. Daenerys pressed forehead to Jon's. We stand on edge of world, Yet it feels like beginning. A first page, he agreed. She lifted hand. Tiny flame danced on fingertip, Ilynrin's trick taught. We write our story not on stone or iron, but on hearts willing to listen. Jon clasped her flame-lit fingers. Then let's write carefully, fiercely, honestly. They kissed, flame extinguished between joined palms, yet spark carried in veins of every witness, and every dragon overhead. Years future would tell children of Wolf King and Dragon Queen who bridged waters with songs, of libraries supported by swords that once caused despair, of hatchlings taught to guard crops by warming soil rather than scorching, of a wall dismantled into stones that lined canals turning floods to lifeblood, of a realm where lords and small folk alike gathered in assemblies to voice needs, of oceans patrolled by ships bearing banners of unity, of auroras returned each decade, a reminder magic lives, when men choose not fear but respect. But those pages unwritten stretched beyond horizon. For now, beneath constellations new dragons traced and comets foretold, Jon and Daenerys simply stood hand in hand, listening to wave and wind, knowing dawn would find them still writing, still learning, still choosing diplomacy over Dragonfire, yet ready always to breathe truth when fire alone might fail. And somewhere, across endless sky, the echo of their oath joined pulse of stars, bright and enduring as the promise of a gentler, braver age. Dawn spills across the Great Pyramid like molten copper, and Daenerys Targaryen wakes to the soft clatter of seabirds wheeling outside high arches of carved porphyry. Beside her, Jon breathes slow and steady, hair tousled against a pillow embroidered with snow wolves and dragons entwined. Beyond the balcony, Meereen's rooftops glimmer damp with dew, and the broad Skahazaden flows gold toward the eastern dunes. For a breath she lingers, a queen content, but duty rises with the sun. She slips from silk sheets, finds a robe of desert blue, and steps onto cool mosaic tiles. Below, in the courtyard of the 15 Harps, unsullied drill in tight squares, shields angled to catch first rays. Grey worm stalks between ranks, voice crisp as clashing blades. Near the Fountain of Wings, Ilynrin perches atop a marble griffin, clicking in time to spear thrusts. At his feet, two smaller hatchlings scuttle. Casaros, green-flecked and quick as grass snakes, and Nihex, pale gold still awkward on talons. They trill at Daenerys' appearance, necks craning. She raises a hand. The little ones hush and murmurs, Zaldriz's Adruda. Dragons settle. They fold wings, tails curling. She descends spiral stairs that coil around crimson pillars, meeting Grey Worm as the unsullied snap to attention. Kelbagon, he says, High Valyrian for good morning, bowing fist to chest. The hatchlings grew restless at dawn. They need sky, Daenerys answers. Soon, but first council. Grey Worm signals a horn blast. The unsullied reform into two silent columns, escorting queen and hatchlings through cool corridors into the solar of 9 flames. There, a long cedar table waits beneath hanging lanterns. Jon has already arrived, hair damp from hurried wash, ghost sprawled at his boots. Sam sits with quill poised, Davos rolling parchment maps, Bran silent in a high-backed chair, eyes distant in early sight. Asha Greyjoy lounges near a lattice window, sleeves rolled, sea salt freckles bright, as Tyrion fumbles with stacked treatise copies, cursing spilled ink. Brienne and Podrick guard the archway, plate polished and lions of the Queen's Guard replaced by wolves embracing dragons. No herald announces, they simply converge. Daenerys takes her seat beside Jon. Tyrion clears his throat. First Order, reports from the Valyrian expedition. Sam smooths the top map. Our vanguard reached the smoking shore 3 days past. They established a stone-walled camp on an obsidian bluff, named it Peacehaven. Initial survey confirms ruins of a citadel intact enough for library conversion. Also, they found additional dragon eggs, 2 possibly petrified shell stage 3. 1 coffin size. His voice trembles at the magnitude. Jon's brows lift. Any signs of the stone men or grayscale? Sam shakes his head. Maesters report ambient heat may discourage the disease. Still, all wear dampened sandstone masks. Asha leans forward, boot hooked on bench. The straight currents around the peninsula shifting. My tide reader says seafloor is rising. Volcano pressure or magic, who knows? But it shortens safe passage to 10 hours per tide. Tyrion scribbles. We'll stagger the cargo fleet to ride high water out, low water in. Next, Pentos. Davos speaks. Triarch envoys request in-person mediation over grain tariffs. They pledge 50 longships for relief convoys to the Summer Isles, in exchange for representation on the new SOC Council. Daenerys nods. Grant it. Let them see how votes feel heavier than chains. Bran's eyes unfocus. He gives a faint smile. The Summer Isles will accept help before next great storm. But beware pirate banners massing near the Basilisk Isles. Black krakens with fanged suns. Podrick straightens. Black krakens? Ironborn splinter crew. Asha grimaces. Ugly lot, led by Carl the twice-hanged. We'll run them down. She flashes flint grin. Need to test new ballista swivels anyway. Jon interlaces fingers. Our immediate task is integration. How Westeros and Slavers Bay share knowledge, trade, defense. All while guiding dragons toward stewardship, not tyranny. He looks to Daenerys. We sail for Valyria within the fortnight. Each counselor chooses delegates to remain or join. Brienne stays here organizing harbor watch. Grey Worm secures Meereen. Tyrion leads King's Landing restoration until his voyage east once Parliament of Commons convenes.
Sam.
I'll accompany. Sam blurts, cheeks crimson. Library catalogs wait. Very well, Jon says. Asha, we need your hulls. She taps dagger pommel. Driftwood fleet's ready.
Ten warships, 20 cargo.
Davos nods. I'll chart currents. Tyrion eyes parchment. I, alas, must stay longer. New tax code to finalize. He sighs theatrically. But send ravens daily. I loathe surprise crises. Daenerys rises. Then prepare. In 3 days the hatchlings test open sea flight. If they find the courage, they fly lead scout. Sun climbs to zenith. Meereen's air thickens with baked spice and camel dung. On the terrace of the Road of Rains, Daenerys meets with freedmen leaders, former pit fighters, washerwomen, merchants. They gather in semicircle beneath awnings strung with woven rush mats. One by one they voice concerns. Drought pinching date palms, city wells brackish. She promises engineers to deepen aquifers. Gray-robed maesters will read water signs. They ask about dragons, will they guard caravans? Daenerys responds, dragons guard peace. Guards will escort caravans. They nod, satisfied. After, she retreats to small courtyard shaded by lemon trees where Jon waits, map scrolls scattered across low table. He looks tired, smudges beneath eyes like soot. She pours water into ceramic cups, offers one. You plan, but also worry. Storm season's shifting, Jon says. If the seafloor shifts, we may need breakwater piers at King's Landing sooner than hoped. We'll carve basalt from Valyria, Daenerys answers. Forged in fire, stone will hold back water. He smiles, brushing her knuckles. You speak of forging worlds like Smith of Fates. Together, she says simply. Ghost trots up, tail wagging. Hatchlings follow, drawn by wolf's musk, chirping. Jon kneels to scratch Casaros behind head ridge.
Skalis hardening fast.
They shed daily, Daenerys notes with mother's pride. Soon they breathe full flame. Jon chuckles. Let's teach them to start forge fires, not tavern brawls. 3 days later, wind over Meereen tastes of chalk, dust, and sulfur. On a plateau beyond city walls, once battlefield, now seeded with crimson poppies, the sky swarms with wings. Drogon leads, vast black sails eclipsing sun. Regal and Viserion flank, their shadows striped across dunes. Beneath Ilynrin, Casaros, Nihek swoop in playful dive, squeals high-pitched. Jon stands atop a sandstone ridge with Bran, Sam, Asha, and Davos. Unsullied ring base at respectful distance. Daenerys climbs Drogon's neck. Scales shimmer with morning light. She steadies, gives shrill whistle. Hatchlings mimic. She calls Valyrian command. Vezov! Higher! Dragons surge skyward. Air blasts sand into swirling ribbons. Jon shields face, heart thunderous. The hatchlings flap desperately. At 50 feet, Casaros falters, but Ilynrin nudges him upward with wing tip. They catch insulated thermals. Nyhex wobbles, roars frustration. Daenerys steers Drogon in wide arc seaward. Storm clouds bruise horizon. She signals demonstration loop. Elder dragons bank elegantly. Hatchlings mirror clumsily but stay aloft. Jon whoops. Davos laughs as sea captain at miracle. Bran's lips part in wonder. Sudden gust tears across plateau. Nyhex buffeted. He spirals. Daenerys commands Drogon to dip, but Ilynrin streaks downward first, smaller wings slicing air. He hooks claws round Nyhex's nape, stabilizing descent in tandem swirl until both right themselves above dunes. Cheers erupt below. Ilynrin chirps proud. Jon grins at Daenerys as Drogon levels overhead. She lifts palm, triumphant. Dragons stream toward coast, silhouettes shrinking. Hatchlings follow, first great journey begins. Night drapes Meereen with violet hush. Jon and Daenerys share quiet on palace balcony overlooking lantern-studded streets. Below, festival of seventh day of chains broken hums. Cymbals clash, dancers twirl in bronze masks. Sounds rise gentle like tide. Jon sips date wine. Tomorrow we finalize crew list. Yes, she answers. Then Valyria. He hesitates. What do you fear most there? She contemplates moonlit waves. Not fire, not ruin. Fear that memories hold my family's madness in stone. That echoes might lure dragons to old cruelties. He takes her hand. We carry new songs. She smiles, presses lips to his knuckles. They remain until festival drums fade and only Seaside remains. Departure day dawns amber rose. At Meereen's docks, flotilla musters. Asha's Kraken's kiss flagship. Davos's weathered maid. Sam's ink and quill. Grey Worm's disciplined guardian of freed. Jon boards the wind's grace again, now refitted with dragon hitch post upon aft deck. Monks chant blessings in Valyrian and Common. Water priests sprinkle perfumed oil. Freedmen children throw flower petals. Daenerys hovers above astride Drogon. Regal and Viserion to either side. Hatchlings cluster near masts, claws gripping chain-padded perches. Sailcloth billows, rigged with new triangular sails of pale gray. Wolf pelts sewn into corners as talismans. Tyrion remains on pier, dressed in simple green doublet. He waves parchment and quill. If catastrophe strikes, send raven. The calm rains, send wine. 7 keep you. Brienne stands tall in filed-down lion helm, saluting. Cersei, half-shadowed beneath hood, nods once. Not farewell but acknowledgement of path chosen. Horns blare, mooring ropes cast. Fleet glides into Bay of Dragons, hulls slicing cerulean. Dolphins escort as if royal guard. Above, dragons will sentinel arcs. Hatchlings shriek delight, sliding on wind. By twilight, Meereen's spires shrink to star-like points. The fleet turns west, hugging isles. On deck, Jon studies charts with Davos. Currents unpredictable, Davos says, finger tracing swirling ink. We surf lava-warm ridges. Keep sails ready to reef. Ghost patrols rail, hackles rising when seabirds dive. Nyhex mimics the wolf, snapping at gulls but failing to catch. Daenerys descends ladder to quarterdeck, feet sure despite ship roll. She joins Jon at map. When we reach Valyria, we anchor in Blackglass Cove. From their dragons scout inland. Ground party cross lava tubes at dawn. Scouts report geysers, Jon notes. We'll need heat masks. Sam appears, arms full of scrolls. I compiled notes from Archmaester Domai's journals on Valyrian mineral springs. Some pockets vent toxic vapors. Avoid purple fumes. Daenerys nods. Dragons sense poison. They'll alert. Bran wheels forward, eyes distant again. Beware not stone men, but stone beasts, wyverns turned glass by eruptions. They linger still. Jon frowns. Stone beasts. He means fire-frozen lizards. Sam clarifies. Legends speak. They move little, but their shards cut. Davos mutters. As if waterspouts and volcanoes weren't enough, Asha strides over. Volcano smoke ahead. My night lookout spotted embers. She sniffs sea breeze. Smells like forge coals. Daenerys calls to Drogon overhead. He banks. 3 hatchlings rally. Their silhouettes vanish into twilight. Stars kindle, moon swells above. Second night, fleet nears sorrowful isles. Tiny atolls where trees twist silver under perpetual ash drift. Jon gazes over railing, shorelines shimmer eerie green from glass sands. Bran whispers, ghosts of fires past. They pass silently. Sudden clang forward. Lookout bell triggers. Sailors shout. Water ahead froths. Luminescent algae swirling in massive vortex. Currents drag weathered made starboard. Davos curses, orders crew to cut auxiliary sails. Asha signals ships to tack. Jon grips rail. Dragons swoop low. Drogon unleashes gout of steam-searing flame, vaporizing algae, releasing heated gases that burst with thunder. Vortex diffuses. Fleet steadies. Crew cheers dragons. Daenerys bows head from saddle. Storm clouds close. Rain lashes decks. Sheets of warm sulfuric water stinging eyes. Ghost shelters under hatch. Sam scrolls sealed in wax chest. Jon stands to ensure lashings secure. Lightning cracks. Silhouette of regal lit turquoise. Wings beating storm. By dawn, skies clear. Sea calm as if storm forgotten. They sight plumes rising from Valyrian Peninsula. Black volutes twisting. Drogon roars greeting. Hatchlings answer. Black glass cove yawns between 2 obsidian cliffs like jaws lined with daggers of petrified flame. Waves hiss against shore of glass pebbles. Fumaroles spew steam. Heat haze shimmers over ruin-scattered flats. Fleet anchors in deeper water. Longboats row through surf. Unsullied disembark first. Spears lowered, breathing through soaked linen masks. Jon follows wearing maester-fashioned copper respirator. Daenerys lands Drogon on jagged promontory, surveying. The air pulses with ancient heartbeat. Distant rumble of magma, crackle of cooling stone, faint hum as if spells still echo. Crumbled road of fused dragonbone snakes inland. On horizon stands a half-collapsed tower, once sentinel, now skeletal ribs. Sam sets up camp markers. Bran directed to shaded ruins safe from fumes. Maesters erect tent labyrinth for triage and recording. Asha oversees perimeter, scouts crevasses. Davos organizes ration crates. Dragons circle overhead, trailing sparks like comet tails. At dusk, Jon, Daenerys, Sam, Asha, Grey Worm, and small escort venture toward tower, named Emberspire on Sam's quick chart. Hatchlings accompany, flitting low, path strewn with chunks of black rock, still warm. Strange flowers grow in cracks, translucent petals, roots in ash. They glow faint.
Sam kneels, fascinated.
Halfway, ground trembles, a low seismic grumble. Nyhex chirps alarm, claws at Jon's boot. The earth splits, geyser of steam vents. Grey Worm hauls Sam back. Scalding plume misses by feet. Asha mutters, ground unstable. We crawl the rest. They skirt fissures, ascend slope, reach tower base.
Door arch frames darkness.
Jon draws long claw. Daenerys carries torch. Inside stale heat. Mosaics line walls. Dragons entwined with wolves and lions. Colors still vivid. Sam gasps, takes rubbings. At hall's center stands pedestal of etched obsidian supporting an elegant dagger. Valyrian steel. Hilt shaped like symbiotic wolf dragon. Blade faintly pulses red. Daenerys approaches. Torchlight reveals inscription in glyphic Valyrian. Chirila Vezov Lihasi. By union of fire and frost, the realm thrives. Sam translates, voice breathless. Jon exchanges look with Daenerys. She reaches out, hesitates. Jon places his hand atop hers. Together they lift dagger. It hums soft vibration like purr. Hatchlings hush, heads tilted. Bran's voice echoes, though he stands far behind, his mind within a raven perched on sill. That blade forged by last Valyrian dreamsmith before doom, meant for ruler who bridges elements. His words carry weight of prophecy. Daenerys sheathes blade in cloth. "Symbol," she whispers. Jon nods. "A promise kept." Sudden crack outside shouts. They rush to exit. On ridge, unsullied hold line against creatures emerging from vents. Wyvern-like forms, crystalline scales reflecting ghostlight. Stone beasts Bran foretold. They lumber, claws razor glass. Empty eye sockets glow ember. One swings tail, shattering obsidian block, shard spray. Drogon dives, roaring, elder dragons swoop. Fire meets stone. Flames scatter sparks but melt crystal edges. Beasts shriek, sound like grinding glass. Hatchlings hide behind Jon. Grey worm signals phalanx. Spears thrust but glance off shells. Jon draws long claw. Blade sings, he hacks at a leg joint. Shards fly. Beast stumbles. Daenerys calls, "Dracarys." Drogon breathes concentrated white-hot flame, turning crystal to bubbling slag. Creature collapses. Another charges Sam. Ghost leaps. Fangs sink into brittle throat. Beast shatters like glass window. Third swings at Asha. She barrels aside, axes sever tail. Davos tosses net of dragonglass chain. Wraps head. Regal finishes with flame. Battle ends as quickly as began. Shards litter ground, still glowing. No one dead. 2 unsullied wounded by cuts. Jon pants, wiping sweat. Daenerys checks Ilynrin safe. She meets Jon's eyes. Even stone creatures defend this land's secrets. Sam kneels, examines shards. Composition matches rumor. Dragonglass fused with unknown crystal. Potential to store heat.
Asha spits grit.
Fancy. Let's not collect souvenirs that bite. They retreat to camp as dusk deepens. Fires built in carved trenches. Maesters treat wounds with honey salve. Jon and Daenerys convene war council under canvas lit by glowworms. Bran speaks through own mouth now. The stone beasts awaken by thunder of dragons, not malice. We must tread lightly. Daenerys nods. Tomorrow we explore Heart of Ruins only with songs, not flame. She looks to Sam, bards, maesters. Let music guide, soothe old curses. Jon agrees. Fire only if life at stake. Peacehaven must remain true to name. Night passes uneasy. Winds howl through broken arches like ghost choir. Jon keeps watch, dagger by side. Daenerys sleeps fitful. Dreams of spinning glass dragons. But in dream she sings lullaby and beast still. She wakes, heart steady. Dawn paints sky bruised lavender. In courtyard, Daenerys teaches hatchlings gentle flame control. Lighting basalt brazier to warm stew cauldron. Ilynrin masters low heat breath. Nyhek sneezes sparks but learns. Casaros intones rumbling note as flame flows in ribbon. Bards accompany with harps. Jon consults with Sam. They draft Valyrian glyph translations. Tower mosaic hints at chamber called Heart Forge, deeper inland. They assemble exploring party. Jon, Daenerys, Sam, Grey Worm, Asha, plus 5 bards unarmed. No steel aside from Jon's sword. Dragons escort from above. Hatchlings remain with Bran and maesters. The path winds through canyons of vitreous rock. Strange insects buzz, wings like crystal discs. Flowers exude nectar scent of cinnamon. Sam collects samples. They reach amphitheater carved into hillside. Rows of basalt benches encircling central forge pit. In pit sits massive anvil fused to floor. Runes faint. Around it, dozens of metallic shards. Swords, rings, crowns. Melted into puddle shapes. On wall behind, relief depicts 2 monarchs. Man and woman. Holding blade together, crowns discarded at feet. Daenerys breathes, moved. Jon steps down, hand grazing fused blades, warm still. Sam finds inscription. Here great weapons surrendered to forge peace. He look. Up. They melted weapons of conquered lords. Grey Worm stands sentinel. Asha whistles low. Means to remind victors. Power-tempered. Daenerys approaches Envil. She draws dagger of union from cloth. It glows brighter. She lays it upon Envil. Metal hum resonates like struck bell. Inscriptions on anvil flare gold. Jon places his palm atop hilt. Runes swirl. Re-etch onto blade, bond acknowledging bearer. Light bursts upward, filling amphitheater. Dragons overhead roar response. The burst fades. Blade dims to soft ember.
Sam ster zostrak.
It accepted vow. Daenerys picks up dagger. Inscription changed. By oath of dragon and wolf shall ebb tide of fear. She slips blade back. This forge will melt remaining war trophies. Let realms send blades of hate to rest here. Jon smiles solemn. Symbol travels further than armies. Asha claps Jon's shoulder. Good, but first we must sail home to tell lords. They depart amphitheater as clouds gather. Thunder rumbles, yet air feels lighter, as if land exhales. At camp, Bran greets them with news. Ravens from King's Landing report early floods along Blackwater, but canal gates held. Brienne's watch evacuated Low Quarter safely. Tyrion encloses blueprint for breakwater piers. Sansa writes of festival praising union. Daenerys reads, gratified. Realm stands, even in storms. 1 week passes in study and repair. Camp constructs stone pier for long-term research. Unsullied clear safe paths. Maesters catalog flora. Dragons hunt wyvern but spare stone beasts, guiding them away with rumbling song. On final evening before return voyage, council assembles around grand bonfire of driftwood and aromatic resin. Bards sing ballad of 2 crowns melted. Jon and Daenerys share spiced rum. Ghost lies beneath Ilynrin's wing in canine dragon truce. Sam presents Tally. 2 petrified eggs secured, to be left here until safe incubation methods devised. 15 scroll cases, 37 plant samples. 4 casks of obsidian shards for experiments. Davos charts deeper stable route. Bran shares vision. I see our descendants walking gardens where dragons rest among orchard trees. Blade of Union rusts in museum. Not needed. He smiles thinly. Keep walking the path. Asha raises horn. To walking, sailing, flying. Cheers echo. Flames flicker. Dragons soar overhead. Silhouettes against crowded sky of early stars. Jon turns to Daenerys. Tomorrow we sail home. She nods, gaze distant at constellations. Home is wherever this promise endures. They clasp hands. Night deepens. Camp quiets. Hatchlings nestle beneath elder wings. In Jon's tent, he pens letter to Tyrion. Found heart forge. Weapons of war no longer burden ground. We will send swords. Prepare lords. He signs wolf and dragon seal. He glances to sleeping Daenerys, hair silver in moonbeam. He breathes gratitude. Story long yet only beginning. Return voyage calm. Sea like molten glass. Fleet lands at Driftmark to jubilant throngs. News spreads of Heart Forge. Westerosi lords dispatch envoys offering rival blades for melting. King's Landing hosts procession. Wagons piled with arms from Storm's End, Casterly Rock, Highgarden. People cheer as blades pass for shipping east. Tyrion oversees ledger. Cersei donates her father's war helm, eyes glinting bittersweet. The Melted Throne's steel library nears completion. Sam coordinates placement of Valyrian texts. Bran plants weirwood sapling in courtyard, roots symbol bridging magic and learning. Dragons roost on new towers Tyrion designed, on outskirts to avoid panic. Ilynrin perches among engineers ready to light forges with measured flame. Council of Commons expands seats for Essosi delegates. Triarchs of Volantis, princes of Dornish Steppe, and even 3 Summer Isles poets attend. Debates lively but respectful. Flood season peaks. Breakwater piers built of Valyrian basalt deflect waves. City safe. Stone beasts, now dubbed glass wardens, ship across for study. They remain docile near Dragon's hum, perhaps bound. Jon and Daenerys travel realm, forging trust. At Winterfell, Snow falls gentle. Dragons loft above white fields, awe not terror. Sansa hosts harvest feast. Wildlings share venison with southern lords. Valyrian bard sings lullaby. Children join. South at Sunspear, Nyhex warms palace baths. Dornish vintners toast. Dragon's heat ripens vineyards early. In Riverlands, Heartforge relic inspires smiths. They craft plows, irrigation pipes. Years turn. The dagger of union rests in glass case, rarely drawn.
Assemblees govern, armies shrink, bards flourish.
Stone roads stretch, canal gates expand. Airships, balloon prototypes powered by dragon-heated vents. Begin testing, dreamed by Tyrion and Sam. One twilight atop Melted Sword Bridge, now called Concord Span. Jon and Daenerys stand, older but unbowed. City lamplight shimmers. Bells toll not alarm but curfew peace song. Ghost, muzzle graying, lies beside Ilynrin. Now grand drake of pearl and lavender. Hatchlings groan. Cassaro's verdant guardian of Reach Groves. Nyhex golden sentinel of Sunspear's coast. Jon speaks softly. Do you miss conquest? Daenerys smiles, eyes reflecting torches. Each treaty won is sweeter than a city burned. She turns to him. We broke wheel. Now we spin it into loom-weaving futures. He squeezes her hand. From distant towers, children's laughter carries. Above, Aurora returns. Green ribbons dancing. Dragons answer with thrumming song that vibrates through bridge stones into bones of every witness. Daenerys leans against Jon. Listen, the world sings more than it screams. He nods, resting brow to hers. And we will keep it singing. Sky darkens to velvet, bright with stars newly etched by peaceful hearts. And under that patient choir of light, wolf and dragon watch realm breathe, guarding promise forged not by fire alone, but by faith, word, and unyielding choice to spare kings landing from Dragonfire on that fateful day long ago. Setting in motion an age where flame warms gardens, swords bear stories, and every newborn cry is met not by bells of terror, but by songs of dawn. Deep in the black hour before sunrise, a hush settled over King's Landing that had not existed since Maegor razed the Red Keep. No clatter of wagons, no wayward drunk rolling a barrel, not even the slow creak of river ice bumping the pylons of Concord Span. Winter's breath sharpened the starlight until the constellations themselves seemed freshly forged, and on the ramparts Daenerys Targaryen, now Daenerys of House Stark in the tongues of jesters. Let the chill bite her cheeks while she waited. For Jon, he found her near the highest Merlin, ghost padding ahead like a ghostly herald. He carried a small wicker cradle insulated by direwolf fur, and inside, Nyhex's newest clutch of softshell eggs pulsed with a faint, amber life. Their warmth steamed in the brittle air, and when Daenerys leaned close, she heard the faint thrum of unhatched hearts beating a rhythm more delicate than a sparrow's. Jon eased the cradle onto a stone ledge crusted with frost and exhaled. He'll notice soon, Jon said. She'll wake and scour every corner of the rookery. She already knows, Daenerys answered, and she trusts us. She brushed a thumb over one shell. A momentary tremor answered her touch, quick and sure. These three will not see the wariness their older brothers met. They will be born among laughing children and weaving looms, not siege towers. Jon tilted his face to the sky. The wind tastes of snow from the Riverlands. Today is the final session before the charter becomes law. She smiled gently, and there are still lords petitioning to insert last-minute clauses. Even peace carries politics. Let them argue, he said, while they quarrel over punctuation. Canal gates open, and blacksmiths convert swords into scythes. He watched her gaze linger on the eggs. Will you bring them to the session? No, she said. Their place is with the city's youngest. For orphanages sent requests for a dragon blessing this winter. Let the first breath these hatchlings draw be inside a cradle hall filled with lullabies. She straightened. But that comes after the basilisk hunt. At the mention, Jon's jaw tightened. Reports had flown in daily from Asha's scouts. Carl the Twice-Hanged had seized half the stepstones, banking pirate gold to fund a fleet of black-hulled longships bearing Scorpion ballistae. Worse, He'd brokered bargains with Carcosa alchemists for smoke powder potent enough to rival wildfire. Rumors claimed he sought a dragon egg to cement his right to rule the narrow Shadow Kingdom. A child's grandiose dream, yet dreamers with powder and iron grew dangerous quickly. Davos returns tomorrow, Jon said. He'll pilot the first cargo amphibians through the new strait. If Karl strikes, he'll aim there. They leaned into the silence, the eggs between them glowing softly. Down in the royal courtyard, a single watch bell chimed, low and unhurried, signaling the 6th hour. Lamps along the Concord span guttered alight one by one, thin towers of flame reflected in the Black River. Daenerys lifted her eyes. Tonight, when the charter seals, I ride east with Drogon and the Wing brothers. Ilynrin stays to watch the nest, but Rhaegal and Viserion will accompany. Karl's men fear what they've only seen as stories. She hesitated. Come with me. Jon's brows furrowed. The Lord's Moot expects me at noon. Let them decide without you for once, she said. Tyrion can officiate. Sansa can negotiate. You forged the wheel. Now trust them to spin it. Wind swept her silver hair across her face, and he saw in her a spark of the girl who once walked through pyre flames. He glanced at Ghost at the cradle at the city below. If I go, he said slowly, I go not as king, but as a soldier of peace. She took his hand. That's all I ever needed. By high morning, the great September Yard, the same desecrated scar where Dragonfire might once have reigned, bustled like a harvest fair. A ring of freshly planed benches circled a dais of island cedar, its planks impregnated with molten basalt to resist both freeze and flame. Tyrion stood upon the platform, tapping a silver rod against his palm while page boys hurried past, bearing sheaves of parchment tall as their shoulders. To the east, Brienne marshaled the resplendent Queen's Guard in half-wolf, half-dragon helms. To the west, Cersei, wearing sober crimson and no crown, personally directed the orphan choirs as they practiced the new realm anthem that blended Dornish syncopation with Myrinese modal scales. Samwell Tarly tottered up the 3 broad steps of the dais, arms wobbling under the Charter of People's Rights, now bound in blue leather, studded with gems donated by each major house. When he thumped it down, dust motes pirouette in the winter sun. Tyrion opened the tome to the final blank leaf. Ink, he barked. Podrick produced a vial dark as Maester's midnight, the first batch of iron-diffusing carrion beetle dye, a symbol of pest-turned progress. Quills. 3 scribes stepped forward, each bearing eagle feather pens tipped with Valyrian steel nibs melted from the heart forge. While Tyrion arranged them, Sansa glided across the dais, cloak of northern gray trimmed in weirwood red. She nodded polite greeting to Lords Arryn, Royce, and Hightower, then leaned toward Tyrion. Jon. Indisposed by duty elsewhere, Tyrion murmured, but his seal is prepared. Flying into danger again, is he? She exhaled. No matter. The realm can stand on 2 queenly legs until he returns. The proceedings began. Lords, ladies, and common councilors queued to sign. Each pressed thumb to beetle ink pad, then placed print beside name. The charter traveled clockwise like a sacred relic. The Smith Guild masters smudged calligraphy alongside Princess Ariane's flourish, the scrawl of a one-eyed riverman neighboring Bran's precise stark runic mark. No trumpets, no drums, only murmured promises and the scratch of quill. When Cersei's turn came, she paused. For a full breath, she simply held the pen, lips parted. Then she signed not with her name but with a single sweeping glyph, an open lion's pole releasing a broken chain. Silence rippled. Brienne's gaze softened behind her helm. Tyrion bowed his head, unsmiling, yet his eyes shone. Just before midday, Bran's attendant wheeled him forward. Bran laid his living hand upon the page and, against protocol, closed his eyes. A faint shadow of weirwood leaves rustled through the yard, though no tree grew near. When the moment passed, his print remained, pale and whirled like a wind-drawn spiral. Tyrion turned to face the crowd. By quill and by thumb, the charter is bound. May this ink outlast any sword. Applause rose, measured, then swelling. Bells chimed. Rooks croaked from tower eaves, and the orphan choir lifted slender voices. Sansa stepped to the edge of the dais, letting the new anthem pour into the square. It traveled upward, out across rooftops, across the Blackwater, and even, though no one yet knew, over the foam-cresting waves where a wolf king and a dragon queen bore down on pirates who thought the world still belonged to fear. Carl the Twice-Hanged stood upon the deck of the Widow's Howl as dawn bled through fog thick as grog. Behind him 21 blackwood keelboats rode the low surge, their yardarms bristling with wicked iron harpoons. At the flagship's prow a figurehead of Leviathan bone jutted outward, jaws open, and deep inside that maw a green glow pulsed. Pig bladder bombs of brimstone's breath, stolen from Lyseni alchemists, ready to turn ship and sea into a crater of fire. Carl's crew were men and women who had sewn coins into their flesh as vow-brands. Each had sworn to carve a kingdom out of the Black Strait, or fall and rise again, twice hanged, thrice unkillable. They drank powdered basilisk blood that quickened their hearts and cracked their minds, and each night they whispered to the sea that dragons could burn skin but not salt-sworn souls. At third bell a scout longship slithered through the murk, pennant frayed. The messenger, skin waxy from sleepless vigils, clambered aboard to kneel. Fleet inbound, my lord. 10 warships, emblems of wolf and kraken allied. Carl grinned, revealing sharpened teeth. And dragons? Not yet, the scout choked. But the air smelt of lightning. Prepare nets laced with star iron, Carl ordered, and show them the breath of brimstone. Below deck, clock crates ticked. The dawn flame cut through dawn like a blade of moonlight. Asha Greyjoy stood astride the bowsprit, hair a whip in the gale, spyglass to eye. Beyond the fog she glimpsed faint lanterns. Too low to be merchantmen, too many to be fishermen. War keels, she spat. Black-hulled rats. She signaled Davos on the weathered maid. Spread wings, ready rams. On wind's grace Jon tightened gauntlets, long claw belted. Grey worms archers knocked dragonglass bolts. Above, Drogon's silhouette loomed immense, trailing grey sheet of cloud like a war cloak. Regal and Viserion flanked. Ilynrin hovered between masts, juvenile but burning to prove himself. Daenerys called to the dragons over Wind Howl, her voice threaded with Valyrian cadence and northern brevity. No flame until I command. We break fear, not flesh. The fleets converged. Carl's ships fanned, forming crescent trap. Ballistae cranked. Star iron nets glimmered. At Carl's beck, the Widow's Howl opened its Leviathan maw and lobbed 2 bladder bombs. They sailed in slow arcs, hissing toward dawn flame. Drogon folded wings, dived. Flame roared, not wildfire hot, but a narrow lance of white-blue heat that met the bombs midair. They burst in harmless spray of molten glass long before reaching wood. A second volley rose. Regal countered, Viserion swirling cool updrafts that smothered fuse flames. Dawnflame's deck shook as ballista bolt grazed capstan. Asha cursed, wheeled starboard. Iron-bound ram cracked into the splinter crown, and the pirate longship folded like bread crust. Davos's brig darted through smoke to flank, Marines leaping across with net hooks to secure masts. Carl howled fury. He slashed the throat of a powder monk and hurled the corpse into the brimstone stores, sparks flying. Livid green tongues whirled up. If the dragons would not burn, he would burn everything. Daenerys felt the shift in the air, a chemical tang like raw chaos. She guided Drogon into hover above Widow's Howl and spoke one word. Sovs. Breathe, but Drogon exhaled not fire. Instead from his maw spilled a vortex of pressured wind, born of wing beats and chest muscles, a hurricane cry. The gale slammed onto the ship's deck, snuffing the rising green tongues before detonation. Smoke parted. Carl stumbled, eyes wide. Then Ilynrin swept in, small but swift. He opened jaws and let forth measured line of bright saffron flame that raced along ship's railing, lighting every star iron net in harmless flare, welding them to spar and sail so they sagged limp and useless. Grey worms archers fired grapples, unsullied boarded. Blades flashed, But the fight died quick once Karl's lieutenants realized dragons fought not to kill but to disarm. They threw swords into the sea. Chain mail rattled surrender. Karl alone refused. He climbed figurehead, hands blistering, and bellowed curses to storm and salt. Jon landed on deck. He walked across splintered planks to face the pirate king whose pupils spun wild as coin whirl. "Kneel," he said. "Never," Karl hissed. "I die twice hanged, thrice born. So be it." Jon drew Longclaw half an inch, enough for sunlight to catch the ghost steel. But Karl flung himself backward, arms spread, into the maw of the Leviathan. He plunged onto now dormant powder crates and lay still, chest impaled by jagged bone. The twice-hanged had found a third rope, softer but final. Silence swept across the strait. Dragons wheeled overhead, their shadows lacing water. From the wind's grace Daenerys raised fist. Trumpets of relief answered. Jon walked to the stern and stared into east wind that now carried only sea salt and possibility. Davos brought news. Half of Karl's fleet surrendered. The rest fled. Minimal casualties. Cargo amphibians safe. Asha winked. Another kingdom denied to fools. Jon smiled weary. He looked up to Drogon. "Let's go home." News outpaced the returning fleet. Ravens raced stormwinds. By the time Dawnflame's sails crested the horizon of Dragonstone, garrisons already celebrated with lanterns shaped like wolf heads and dragon wings. The freed pirates, unchained, offered honest pay, rode captured keels under gray banners stitched by orphan seamstresses, promising to dredge wreckage and map shoals instead of plundering. Those who accepted found themselves fed, clothed, and tutored in letters under Sam's burgeoning naval college. Those who refused were put to rebuilding shattered stepstone lighthouses. Even punishment forged purpose. 3 days after returning, Jon made good on Daenerys' pledge to introduce the newborn eggs to Laughing Halls. In the West Side House of Dawn, once a condemned brothel, now an orphanage smelling of warm porridge, the first egg cracked in the arms of a 6-year-old girl named Mara. She squealed as a peach-hued dragonet blinked at her, sneezed sparks that fizzled against specially woven flame wool. The choirs sang an ancient lullaby blending Valyrian countersong and the northern Song of the Snows. And in that mingling of tongues the hatchling chirruped as though echoing both. Across the city bells rang, the old fear bells now retuned to harmony. Dove flocks wheeled. Glassmakers on the street of steel forged commemorative cups bearing twin sigils. Bakers sold sweet cakes dusted in sugar. Crystal dragon scales. Peace, once a fragile seed, sprouted fruit. Spring edged in, half free of frost, half shy to thaw entirely. The first session of the realm's bicameral parliament convened in the old throne hall, now the Hall of Commons, where iron benches replaced razored seat. Jon sat among delegates and spoke rarely. He knew the power of listening. Discussions turned to establishing rotating capitals, so no region felt ignored. Old Town offered the Starry September's amphitheater. Winterfell proposed the renovated glass-roofed Godswood Gallery. Sunspear promised sea-breezed council courts. A schedule was drafted. Each equinox the locus of governance would shift, traveling with the seasons like a migrating heart. In those early sessions, one persistent voice rose. Lady Diana Manderly, champion of coastal fisherfolk, argued for a standing fleet dedicated not to war but to rescue, trade escort, and scientific exploration. Asha seconded. Davos volunteered as First Admiral. Thus the Fleet of the Dawn was born, hulls clad with faceted glass steel to resist coral rips, dragon-heated boilers driving paddle wheels for comms when sails sagged. Tyrion saw opportunity for innovation and commissioned gnomish inventors from Lannisport to test wind-propelled turbine blades. Sansa secured investment from Hightower scribes. Sam insisted each ship carry a library alcove. Dragons escorted maiden voyage as far as Arbor's Green Straits, then banked skyward to chase summer thermals. Meanwhile, gray worms unsullied rotated into teaching posts. Discipline, self-defense, and code of civic guardianship. At first townsfolk eyed them warily. Soldiers carried scars, but soon children imitated their drill marches with broom spears, laughing. Mercy wore many uniforms. One evening in late spring, Bran summoned Jon and Daenerys to the Godswood courtyard recently transplanted to King's Landing. Saplings nurtured from Winterfell cuttings, their red leaves fluttering. Bran sat beneath the heart tree, eyes half closed. "Stormlight influx," he murmured. "Auroras intensify each year. They feed ley lines. The world is waking." Jon knelt. "Is that good?" "Neither. Life stirs. Magic seeps. Be ready." Bran blinked, returning from distant sight. Someone comes who would twist the singing sky into spear point. Daenerys's brow furrowed. "Name?" "Not yet," Bran said. "But I see an obsidian crown ringed by copper serpents. And I see empty eyes that mirror the aurora. Green fire pupils." Jon exchanged look with Daenerys. "A remnant of the old Valyrian blood?" "Perhaps," Bran said. "Guard the Heart Forge. Guard the Charter. Both are shields." Then he smiled faintly. "But do not fear. The land itself stands with you now." They left uneasy but resolute. That night they walked the ramparts again, watching ribbons of eerie light ripple violet and jade across the stars. Dragons skimmed high, silent silhouettes. And Jon realized that whatever new threat rose, the world had allies it never had before. Children whose lullabies dragons had heard since hatching. Fishermen escorted by wyverns tamed through song. Orphans who would grow into scribes, smiths, and singers wielding words as shields. The next war, if war came, would not be fought alone. Years unspooled like silver thread. Concord span sprouted market stalls where once charred corpses were piled. The library welcomed its 1,000th apprentice, a Myrish refugee who learned both arithmetic and snow sculpture. The Heart Forge melted the last known Valyrian steel greatsword, Oathreaver of House Farwind. Its metal poured into mold for the keystone of Northern Dornish aqueduct. Lords grumbled, then cheered when drought fields bloomed. Cersei aged, hair silvering, but her orphan houses multiplied. She tutored children in sums and scripture. Jaime spent mornings training them with wooden swords while Brienne drilled their stances. Sometimes Tyrion joined, reading tales of Groleo the Good Pirate. Laughter echoed where once suspicion lurked. Sam became Grand Loremaster, arranging annual confluences, gatherings of scholars, septons, warlocks, and even a few shy children of the forest. They debated how best to harness the singing sky. Some predicted new metals, others, flight without wings. One crisp autumn dawn, Tyrion and Sansa stood on an observation tower of Valyrian basalt, eyes fixed westward. Far across the sea, plumes of pale fire exploded upward, the first test of Aurora-captured energy. Elders worried. Youths cheered. Sansa turned to Tyrion. "Our greatest foe is impatience," he sighed, nodding. In the 20th year after the Charter, a caravan from the Jade Sea arrived bearing a gilded litter. Out stepped a woman of impossible age, eyes glowing green fire. Copper serpents adorned her brow. She called herself the Emerald Flame, last Magister of Yen. She demanded to speak with King and Queen. Jon and Daenerys received her in a garden court. She bowed stiffly. Serpents hissed. "The sky's fire is mine," she said. "Give me dragons to ride its storm or face night within night." Jon studied her calmly. "We ride peace. Peace is a candle in wind," she replied. "I offer storm's embrace." Daenerys raised a palm. Dragons descended, elder and hatchling, wings beating air into thunder. Children ran to windows, fearless. Ilynrin landed, breathing gentle warmth that stirred rose petals. The Emerald Flame's serpents recoiled. "Storm has already embraced us," Daenerys said, voice velvet over steel. "We shaped its lightning into plowshares." The Emerald Flame's pupils narrowed to slits. "Then storm will shatter plows and sow fear anew." Jon stepped forward. "Not while wolves guard fields and dragons sing lullabies." A hush fell. Above, Aurora flickered. The Magister lifted a hand. Emerald sparks coalesced into serpentine whips. But before she unleashed them, Bran's voice rang across courtyard, though he stood on rampart. "Enough!" Roots erupted through flagstones, white weirwood shoots twining, grabbing at copper serpents, wrenching them from her crown. The Magister staggered. Her green glare dimmed. Dragons roared. Not fire, but sound that plucked fear's strings loose. Children's laughter spilled from windows. And in that onslaught of innocence, the emerald flame's power guttered like candle confronting sunrise. She fled, magic unraveling in motes of jade.
No guards pursued.
They needed not. Her visage dissolved before gate, leaving only serpents now dull copper. Jon picked them up, handed to Sam for archives. Fear will visit again, he said, but so will dawn. Daenerys threaded fingers through his, and each dawn can be met. They walked, leaving petals and broken stone, heading for the house where orphan choirs rehearsed. Inside, the peach dragonet hatched that cold morning, grown to carriage size, curled among children reading from the charter. One boy stumbled over a phrase. The dragon shuffled closer, humming corrective note. The children giggled and tried again. Jon watched, tears threatening. Our legacy, he whispered. Daenerys rested her head on his shoulder. Not swords or thrones, but this. Outside, the singing sky shimmered again, not ominous but celebratory, painting every rooftop in hues unseen before the day Daenerys chose diplomacy and spared a city. Flames once destined to devour instead warmed hearts, and every note of every lullaby carried the simple lesson forward. That mercy, like Dragonfire, is strongest when tempered by purpose, and that the choice made on the shattered battlements years ago still rang across continents, across decades, across lives yet unborn, a bell of hope no storm could silence. And so the song continued, unwritten but unending, starlight woven into parchment, dragon scale into plow, wolf howl into anthem, forever reminding the realms of men that the gentlest word could tame the fiercest flame, and that one refusal to burn could kindle 1,000 dawns. A hush draped kings landing beneath the early summer moon. The city's pulse slowed to a meditative hum that seemed almost unnatural after decades of clamor. From the ramparts of the rebuilt Red Keep, Daenerys watched the lamplit streets curve away like molten gold, while far below the new godswood, planted from Winterfell grafts, rustled with the murmur of night birds. 3 adult dragons dozed along the outer parapets, wings tucked, eyes slitted, their breathing as steady as bellows in a smithy. Above them, the sky's shimmering aurora painted the clouds violet and jade. It was a quiet so complete she could hear each breath she took, but it could not muffle the restlessness stirring in her chest. She sensed Jon's approach before she heard the soft pad of Ghost alongside him. He carried a travel pack instead of full armor, though Longclaw still rode at his hip. Wordless, he set the pack at her feet. She turned. "You've chosen?" she asked. "I have." His voice was calm, but strain tightened his eyes. "The Jade Sea delegation leaves at sunrise. Their maps show islands we've never charted, fertile, they believe, yet plagued by the Serpent's storm. If magic's rising, we need to know what dangers stir beyond Valyria." Daenerys traced a finger along the crenellations, cool stone beneath her touch. "You ride with dragons or alone?" "Alone," he answered. "Small company. We draw less attention. Quieter," she said, "but more vulnerable." "I trust in the charter, in the respect we carry," he replied, "and in the lessons we've taught the realm. Fear no longer rules the seas." A cool breeze carried salt and honey from the wharves. She looked down. On a balcony below, orphan children knelt with lanterns, singing the lullabies that had tamed dragon hatchlings. Their voices lifted, weaving with the hiss of leaf and scale. "I still feel the weight of peace," she whispered. "It's heavier than any throne." Jon stepped closer, his silhouette limned in aurora. "Then let's share the load. You kept the heart of the realm beating. I'll keep its eyes on the horizon." Daenerys closed her hand over his. "Promise me a raven every fortnight. And you promise to melt no more blades unless they're mine," he jested softly. She managed a tight smile.
"No blades."
"Only plows." Her smile faltered. "Come back." He squeezed her fingers. "I always find my way." Then, as if to seal the vow with something stronger than words, he leaned in, kissed her brow, and slipped away into the dark, ghost's white form trailing like a shard of moonlight behind him. At dawn, the harbor bustled. Bronze-prowed river galleys, squat canal barges, sleek Valyrian courier cutters, each decorated in festival ribbons. Samwell Tarly flitted between crates of star iron instruments and scroll casks, checking manifests, his cheeks already smudged with ink. Davos growled good-natured curses at sailors who bobbled coils of new braided dragon hair rope. Asha Greyjoy reclined on a cargo spool, boot propped on a bollard, watching Jon's modest vessel, the Silent Promise, Provision. The Promise was small, lateen-rigged, fast. Its hull bore the twin wolf dragon sigil flanked by the New Dawn fleet emblem. Above, Ilynrin circled once before banking toward the rookery spire to perch near his younger siblings. Brienne strode up the gangplank carrying crates of valerian root and copper coils for the charter's new public healers, then descended to find Jon. "Word from Meereen," she said. "2 more eggs hatched. They call the hatchlings Hope Song and Ember Stitch." Jon smiled softly. "They will be grown by the time we return." "If you return," Brienne corrected. "Storm seasons worsen." He gripped her forearm. "We've weathered worse. Keep the city steady." "I intend to." She released him reluctantly, and as she stepped back, Podrick hastened over with a satchel of fresh quills. "For Sam," he explained, flushed. At the last moment Sansa appeared on the dock, cloaked in pale lynx fur despite the warmth. She hugged Jon fiercely. "Remind the world who we are," she murmured. "Kings who listen, queens who spare." Jon hauled anchor at mid-morning. The Promise glided past Concord Span where crowds gathered on the parapets waving silk pennons. Dragons trilled overhead. From the deck, Jon traced the line of the bridge, its beams forged from melted swords, and felt both tug and release, like a knot untying only to retie further on. The fleet sailed south-southeast, hugging the frothing edge where summer sea currents mingled with jade deep waters. They skirted the smoking island's volcanic spires and the green reefs of Noth, where fluttering butterflies drifted in kaleidoscopic clouds. Each dusk Sam read star charts while Jon stood with Davos, exchanging silent calculations on drift and wind. At night, the sky glimmered with aurora brighter than any recorded in Sam's codices. So bright sailors whispered it must be the ghosts of the great forge smiths, hammering new crowns for unborn realms. On the 7th night calamity struck. A storm rose out of still air, conjured by some unseen trembling of skyfire. Green lightning forked across the clouds and thunder burst like stone beasts clashing. Waves towered, smashing over the deck. Sailors scrambled to reef sails, but the wind blew straight through canvas as if it were silk. When a bolt scorched the efficacy, turning mast rings to molten ribbon, Jon bellowed for buckets, but water boiled off the scorched wood faster than it could be doused. In that moment he glimpsed the storm's heart, an azure vortex pulsing with the same emerald fire that had lit the emerald flame's eyes. "Skyfire!" Sam shouted, half drowned, flung against a coil. "It's drawn to the ship's lodestones." Jon seized a hatchet, hacked free the star iron navigation cage, and heaved it overboard. It sank hissing. Instantly the wind shifted, gusting east. Lightning veered away. The storm receded as suddenly as it had come. Only then did Jon grasp the scope of Bran's warning. Some force sought to bend the aurora itself, like a whip, to strike at the charter's heart. And their journey had just crossed into its range. When finally they reached the Jade Sea, its waters shone black-green under canopies of impossible stars. Islands studded the horizon like dark jewels, unmapped, forested, wreathed in mist. Here lay the Serpent's Storm, perpetual arrow-straight walls of clouds spiraling from a single origin point somewhere beyond mortal vision. Myths named it the Great Mouth of Yinishar. Sailors called it the Edge of Earth Maw. At its fringes the sea hissed, boiling from undercurrents of flame-red heat. The Promise led a chain of supply dhows toward a jagged archipelago where the Jade delegation's outriders awaited. Under tattered banners of teal and ivory, the locals greeted Jon with a curious blend of reverence and skepticism. They spoke of a mirror woman who had visited months before, bargaining copper serpents for star iron nets. She promised them protection from the Maw's tidal surges, but demanded tribute orphans in return. Jon's blood chilled. The Emerald Flame had harvested fear here, twisting hunger into slavery. Davos met with chieftains while Sam examined lava-melted obsidian glass that grew like coral along the beaches. Their crystal matrices pulsed with faint green veins, the same energy that bent storms. If someone masters resonance, Sam said, they could split the realm in two. That night Jon penned a raven letter to Daenerys, sealed with wax, trusting it to a white hawk bred for distance. In it he wrote, Skyfire weaponized. Emerald Magister hunts Aurora Flux. We press on to root, but threat grows. Keep capital braced. Melted swords may yet forge shields. He sealed the letter with salt tears. At dawn a roar split the air. Not dragon, but some deeper, older thunder. From beyond the maw, a colossal spear of green fire soared into the sky, trailing copper sparks. It struck the aurora, and like breaking glass, the shimmering bands fractured into a cascade of shards, each plummeting as emerald meteors toward the sea. One struck the archipelago's central ridge, shattering cliffs, sending molten stone hurtling. Waves reared, swallowing huts. Jon rallied sailors to lifeboats, ferried villagers to high ground. Yet as they climbed, they witnessed an impossible sight. Form coalescing where the spear had arisen. A silhouette of serpents twisting around a woman of pure green flame. Her laughter rolled across the water, as cold as it was bright. I bend the sky, she proclaimed, voice rippling, and I will unmake your charter. Let the child dragons watch their world burn. Jon drew Longclaw. Slender though distance was, the gesture raised cheers. But steel could not span leagues. Instead he cupped hands, echoing a call once used at Hardhome. High overhead, glimmering in mists, Drogon and Regal banked into view. Daenerys had flown hard upon receiving his raven. She descended in a torrent of heat, Ilynrin and the teenage hatchlings trailing. Daenerys landed upon the ridge like sunrise, cloak snapping. She looked from Jon's ashen face to the flame woman upon the sea. Then she raised her voice in Valyrian, but not to the specter. Instead she sang to the Aurora's scattered shards. Her words were old, older than Valyria. A lullaby once whispered by the first dragon lords to calm newborn WRMs. The tune haunted, minor, steady. Ilynrin echoed with keening soprano. The shards quivered, slowed, hovered like dewdrops. The emerald flame shrieked. Copper serpents writhed. She hurled a whip of skyfire. Regal swerved, but Daenerys held her song, and the shards pivoted, fusing into a shimmering barrier, an iridescent mirror reflecting the whip back upon its caster. The emerald flame's whip struck her own body. She flared, agonized emerald, then imploded, serpents crumbling to verdigris dust. The aurora reknit overhead, radiant but softened, humming like plucked strings. The sea quieted. Jon climbed to Daenerys. They embraced amid cooling stone. Around them, villagers knelt, awestruck. Dawnlight touched dragons perched like gargoyles on the ridge. And in that hush, the sky above Jade Sea glowed gold instead of green, as though cleansed. Weeks later, fleets carried survivors to King's Landing, where council convened in the Godswood Pavilion. Bran confirmed the Emerald Flame's magic siphoned stolen dragon song. When it backfired, her spell unraveled. But ambition of that caliber will surface again, Bran warned. The song of the sky is free to all, and some will seek its harmonics. Tyrion's brow furrowed. Then we codify not only swords and laws, but resonance. A charter of skies, perhaps. Sam grinned wearily. A harmonic covenant. Why not? Daenerys stood. We do more. We teach. Dragons will carry scholars and healers west, east, north to fence ignorance at its roots. Jon added, and we melt fear before it hardens to weapons. He unsheathed Longclaw. Let my sword join the next forge. I need it no longer. Gasps rippled. Brienne protested softly, yet Jon handed the blade to Grey Worm. Daenerys unclasped the copper serpents Bran had taken, relic of tyranny. She placed them atop the blade. Steel and serpent alike feed the next bridge. Ceremonies followed at Heart Forge. Longclaw submerged in crucible flame. Copper serpents curled, melting. The Union dagger glowed brighter, as though nourished by sacrifice. Sam recorded each step. Sansa poured libation of arbor gold. When molten metal cooled, smiths forged a lattice of mirror steel plates fixed atop the beacon tower at Driftmark's highest cliff. At twilight, aurora light caught the plates and scattered beams across the narrow sea, shimmering paths of pale gold that ships could follow through fog. They named it the Light of Promise. Years passed, peaceful. Not perfect. Floods came, harvests failed, rebellions flickered. Yet the charter held because dragons flew low over fields to warm frost-struck wheat, because the fleet of dawn ferried grain, because orphans grown into scribes remembered lullabies and taught them to the next foundlings. Tyrion died at 81, pen in hand. A statue of him reading to children rose in a courtyard of the Hall of Commons. Brienne became keeper of the forge. Her white cloak turned ash-flecked, but her eyes remained bright. Cersei faded peacefully among her lion cubs, their laughter her requiem. Jon and Daenerys aged together. He kept his promise not to wield blade. She seldom blew Dragonfire except to bless kills. They walked gardens hand in hand, marveled at new airships gliding overhead, balloons heated by gentle flame of juvenile dragons, inaugurated by Dornish wine merchants. One crisp evening under silver aurora they sat upon Concord span, now etched with generations of names. Ghost, muzzle white as new paper, slept between them. Ilynrin, wings massive, roost nearby, careful not to crack the bridge. Daenerys leaned against Jon's shoulder, voice soft. "Does the realm still sing?" He listened, heard ship bells, distant drum of canal locks, a lullaby drifting from a window. "Yes," he said, tears in corners of his eyes. "It sings. Then we can rest." She closed her eyes, and he wrapped an arm around her. Above them the sky rippled, not menacing but alive, symphony of colors. For now it was enough, and so the wheel, broken, reforged as loom, wove on. Threads of wolf, dragon, lion, thorn, kraken, sun, spear, and 1,000 unnamed. Its tapestry stretched across waters and centuries, but always at its heart gleamed one simple choice from long ago. The day a queen spared a city. The day fire bowed to mercy. The day dawn, once thought impossible, forever found a way to rise. The wind off Blackwater Bay smelled of brine and lavender when Mara rivers. Once the 6-year-old who had nursed a peach-hued hatchling from its shell stepped from her skiff onto the eastern jetty of God's Rest Isle. Waves slapped the pylons in lazy rhythm, and gulls wheeled overhead, their calls echoing across water tinted bronze by first light. She drew her cloak tighter. Summer's last edge still carried a chill before dawn. Behind her, 2 junior archivists lugged waxed crates of etched glass cylinders. Aurora captured resonance samples bound for the Skyforge. God's Rest had changed little since the Faith had surrendered title a decade prior. The island's low hills remained quilted in scrub heather. The old Seps bell tower leaned at its same worrying angle, and the graveyard stones still listed like drunks after a festival. But the once forbidden catacombs beneath had been transformed, part reliquary, part laboratory, part pilgrimage site, for those who studied the harmonies of Skyfire. From its bronze doors rose a faint vibration, like a tuning fork plucked at the end of the world. Mara paused, one hand resting on the dragon copper clasp at her throat. Hope Song, the hatchling she still called Seed, should be circling above, hunting the night's last moths. And as if conjured by the thought, a flicker of peach and rose glinted against the paling stars. Seed banked, soared once over the bay, then arrowed west to the rookery towers of the capital. He always checked on her, even across miles. She felt it in the tingle along her spine, the hollow in her gut that filled only when he was near. The bond, they called it. To Mara it was music, a chord humming through her bones. Maester Rivers? One archivist, thin, nervous, cleared his throat. "Shall we proceed?" The tide's swinging. "Yes." She pushed worries aside. motioning them inland toward the low archway carved with the three-serpent sigil of the Emerald Reformation Council. Symbol reclaimed, shorn of its tyranny, redrawn as Ouroboros devouring its own venom. Mara could never decide whether she loved or loathed that emblem. Venom became medicine, they said, but only if one knew the dose. Inside, sunlight fell in golden spears through louvered vents, illuminating coils of copper piping and mirrored facets mounted to basalt columns. The air smelled of parchment and hot metal. A chorus of soft voices drifted from the lower stair, acolytes chanting scales meant to stabilize the resonance chambers. Mara's boots rang on iron treads as she descended. The main cruciform gallery lay 30 feet below sea level, converted from ossuary to atrium. Bones had been respectfully reinterred outside long ago. Now cylindrical resonance flutes hung like organ pipes above a glass-floored pit where aurora shards were seated in jeweled gimbals. Maester Quill Ford, stooped, spectacled, smelling faintly of smoked eels, waddled to greet her. "Ah, the wild Maester returns," he crowed. "With fresh resonance, I trust?" "Bound and buffered," she replied. "Caught them while the Jade Arc was cresting last moon. Strong pulse. Eighth tone flattening less than a hair." Quillford's eyebrows leapt. "Eighth tone? Saints preserve us. Let us hope the lattice holds." He waved archivists toward a side bench where copper clamps awaited. Turning back, he lowered his voice. "Whispers say the Skyriders of Karth meddle again, seeding their storm kites to lure resonance south. We'll confirm in Chamber 3, Mara said. "If the phase misaligns, we'll know Karth is meddling." They strolled toward an alcove where a contraption of gears and crystal prisms emitted low chimes. Quill Ford threaded stubby fingers through his beard. "Your seed sails in city sky again. He's rivaling Illinrin for loft these days." "Seed has wanderer's blood," Mara said. "He hates ceilings. And yet you've gathered one of the largest harmonic datasets in realm history." Quillford patted her shoulder. "Wanderer or no, he keeps you on time." "He keeps time for me," she corrected gently. "I follow his metronome." From the north tunnel came a clatter of boots. A messenger, face flushed, jacket emblazoned with a beacon sigil. "Ravens from Heartwood Tower," he gasped. "Unexpected geomagnetic oscillation. A double crest in less than 12 hours. They predict an aurora wave peaking tonight over the Stepstone corridor."
Qui Fordes spectacle flashed.
"Double crest?"
Impossible.
The last double occurred 32 years ago and preceded the Serpent's Spear. Mara swore softly. "If a wave storms the corridor, the new cargo locks won't hold resonance. I need a long-range rider." She glanced upward. Even through stone she felt seeds shift, a sudden curiosity sharpening his path. He'd sensed the call. Quillford fluttered hands. "Take an escort squad, for mercy's sake. If the Stepstone antennae overload, we may face cascade arcs." "Escort slows a dragon," she said. "Better one swift wing than a dozen slow shields." "Better Queen's air safe than realm sorry," he countered. She hesitated. The choice felt too familiar. Trust speed or gather strength. "Seed and I will ride to Stepstone Watch," she decided. "Send Stormcatcher brig by canal. If we're not back by first crest, jettison the antenna arrays." Quillford paled. "But the arrays anchor half the Jade trade route harmonics. Ruin of half the trade is better than ruin of half the coastline." She squeezed his arm. "You taught me that equation yourself." He swallowed, bowed. "Then gods be with you, Maester Rivers. May your melody hold." Mara sprinted back up the iron treads. Seed's shadow already crossed the bay. He'd sensed the urgency. Dragons had opened the world, but distances still commanded respect. Mara and Seed banked west over the capital. Terracotta roofs, tree-lined aqueducts, the mirrored spire of the Skyforge glinting in sunlight. Below, children pointed skyward. Some called names of dragons as easily as they once named lords. The Hall of Commons bell tolled midday. She glimpsed the elder queen, Daenerys, strolling those new rose gardens with a silver-haired boy who must be her grandson, Enar. In 1 month Enar would mount Casaros for his first wing trial. So much, Mara thought, for caution. Peace bred bold airs. Seed rose, cutting the cloud layer. Cold whipped her face. She leaned low over his neck, letting the leathery musk of his scales steady her thoughts. Stepstones shimmered ahead, scattered like spilled coins at the table's edge. From this height, the corridor's twin aqueduct viaducts looked like silver threads sewn across waves. On western horizon, though an oily smear tinted the sky, a luminous green bruise. She felt the hair on her arms rise. They descended toward Stepstone Watch, a modular beacon tower perched on cliff spine, anchored to tide-pound basalt. Below, cranes loaded or into paddle haulers idling in sheltered lagoon. Wind globes hung limp. The air was unervingly still. No gulls cried. Sentinel horns blared. Men ran along gantries. A signal flare burst. Mara landed on the tower's upper deck, Seed spreading wings to steady. Watch Commander Thorin bounded forward. Maester Rivers, you saw the wave. Breaching within hours, she said, dismounting. What's power reading on your array? Thorin led her to a bronze-case dial. The needle jittered near the red band. Jumped 3 points since dawn. Bleed it. She yanked the manual vent lever. Far below, a safety shaft hissed steam. Copper fins rotated, glowing. Needle fell, steadied. Thorin exhaled. Crow's Eye's skeleton crew can vent every hour, but if the crest doubles, it will. She eyed the horizon. The bruise differed from normal aurora bands. Instead of rippling arcs, it formed a spear-thick column descending from clouds in rigid lines. An emerald filament, faint but visible, snaked down to a spot on the distant water. A lens focusing energy. The emerald flame may be gone, Mara muttered, but her geometry remains. Thunder cracked, an electrostatic wave shot across sky. Seed roared defensively. The viaduct below vibrated. Slate slats leapt like kettle lids. A thin white line rippled along its length, then fractured into sparks that danced off the pillars and sprayed molten glass into sea. Vent again, Mara shouted. Crew yanked levers. More vapor roared, but the white line reformed, brighter. A harmonics apprentice staggered up stair, hair singed, southern antennae ringing like mad. The key crystals, they're singing themselves to dust. Shut them down. Pull resonance rods, Mara ordered. If they shatter, we lose the whole corridor. A distant boom shook the deck. One of the supporting pylons of the south viaduct sheared. Stone chunks splashed into foam. Mara's heartbeat hammered. The wave was ahead of schedule. Seed's alarm resounded. He launched, wings beating gale. Mara vaulted atop harness, clamped knees. She signaled Thorin, evacuate low docks, clear all ships south. Then she and Seed soared toward the rising column. The dragon's throat vibrated with a note that matched the column's hum, an attempt to counter-resonate. She opened her own mouth, singing the minor lullaby Daenerys had once used, blending her voice with Seed's deeper thrumming. Their duet spiraled outward. The column wavered, slanted, but the resonance behind it swelled. A second filament descended. Mara felt the ground note shift, a descending fourth dangerously close to the fracture interval. If it matched, the entire corridor could ring apart. She dug heels, urging Seed higher. At the apex she glimpsed, above cloud layer, a swirling gyre of green arcs, like a whirlpool turned upright. Tiny shapes flitted, bronze-wing kites, the rumored storm gliders of Karth, tethered to crystal ballast balloons, harvesting energy. They whipped rings of copper webbing, shaping the aurora into spears. So Karth had inherited the Emerald Flame's dream. Seed roared. Mara drew her dragonglass staff. The shaft sang faintly as it aligned to the aurora pitch. She aimed at the nearest kite, hurled. The glass haft arced true, piercing balloon membrane with wet pop. Helium coughed. The kite tumbled. Without counterweight, the copper web sagged, distorting harmonic funnel. The spear column flickered, broke into scattered ribbons. Envoy riders barked over the wind. Another kite pivoted to dive at Mara, jagged nets out. Seed twisted, but the net scraped his flank, showering sparks. He bellowed pain. The pitch of his roar rose, inadvertently shifting resonance. Mara matched with her voice, high, piercing, disrupting. The net unraveled, shredded ribbons swirling down. Suddenly from south horizon boomed a battle horn. 3 blasts, Asha's signal. Sail shadows carved through fog. The Stormcatcher brig, escorted by twin paddle rams, masts crackling with ceramic lightning catchers. On forecastle, dauntless Davos raised spyglass. Behind, a larger shadow eclipsed sun. Drogon himself, Daenerys astride, with regal and Viserion trailing. Dragons folded wings, riding thermal sheer. At Daenerys' command, elder dragons released low-frequency pulses rather than flame, shaking the kites. Canvas ripped, copper cables snapped. Riders spilled from harness into cloud. The gyre weakened, swirling apart. But a last desperate kite, its pilot masked in black jade, plummeted toward the damaged viaduct support, bronze spear blazing copper lightning along shaft. If it struck the central resonance coupler, the harmonic discharge might shatter half the corridor. Mara spurred Seed, diving. They arrowed downward. Speed howled, her eyes watered. At 100 feet she felt time stretch thin. Seed tucked wings and spun. Mara reached, fingers scrabbling along saddle brace, unsheathed the resonance tuner Quillford had begged her to leave behind, a quartz rod inlaid with copper runes. She hurled it like a javelin. The tuner struck the spear midshaft, detuned its pitch. The copper lightning sputtered violet, then extinguished. The kite slammed into sea short of the viaduct, steam hissing. A geyser erupted, but the coupler remained intact. Dragons circled. The storm gliders scattered, kites shredded. In minutes, the aurora calmed to gentle curtains. Mara landed atop the north pylon. Seed's scales smoked. She pressed ear to his flank, felt song pulsing strong. Relief left her knees weak. Asha's brig anchored nearby. Davos ferried salvage crew. Daenerys circled once overhead, then settled near Mara. Wind tumbled silver braids around the Elder Queen's face. Her smile held pride and sadness. "You risk much, little maester," Daenerys said. Mara wiped blood from cheek. "Risk weighs less than regret." Daenerys glanced at crippled viaduct. "We'll rebuild stronger with resonance dampers. You've taught us much." "And Karth?" Mara asked. "They will face tribunal," Daenerys replied. "But first, they will see what mercy looks like when harmony is shared, not stolen." She extended a hand. "Fly home." Mara nodded. Seed rumbled agreement. Together dragons rode final drafts toward the setting sun. Weeks later, in the Hall of Commons, Jon addressed assembled delegates. "The attack on Stepstone Corridor proves knowledge can liberate or enslave. We cannot shutter discovery, but we must anchor it in trust." He unveiled a charter addendum, the Harmonic Accord, establishing open councils where every city shared resonance research, monitored by Maester Dragon pairs. No secret arrays, no weaponized aurora. A roar of approval followed. Even Kartha's humbled magisters nodded, their punishment being transparency. Sansa signed as North Regent, Daenerys as Sky Warden, Mara as First Harmonic Maester. Afterward, in a garden perfumed by new night bloom orchids, Ellen, Brienne's youngest protege, asked Mara, "Will the sky ever be dangerous again?" Mara knelt. "The sky is like a song, beautiful but sharp edges remain. We tune it together." She pointed upward where aurora shimmered faint rose. "Listen, hear that low hum." The girl closed eyes, nodded. "That is the world saying we belong," Mara told her. "As long as we answer with kindness, it will never turn to screams." The girl smiled, chasing fireflies with bare feet. Across the garden, Daenerys squeezed Jon's hand. "Hard to believe," she murmured. "How close we came to losing all this." Jon watched children laugh. "All saved because one queen once chose mercy." She kissed his brow, gray strands mingling with dark. "Chosen and choosing still. Mercy, like a garden, needs tending." They walked beneath trees grown from the original god's wood saplings. Their branches arched overhead, forming vaults of living green studded by stark red leaves. The wind whispered through them, carrying scents of lavender, sea salt, and distant dragon smoke, reminders of old pain, old power, and the fragile peace they guarded. High above, dragons traced lazy spirals, wings painting geometry against rolling aurora. And everywhere, through cobbled alleys, across steppe and sea, inside farmhouses and glassy observatories, the realm's people lifted voices in songs born from lullabies, forging in melody what once was shaped by swords. Each note declared the same simple creed, that the gentlest word can tame the fiercest flame, and dawn, though fragile, forever finds a way to rise. The first hush of autumn rolled across the city like the closing lids of a contented sleeper, and with it arrived the long-promised quiet festival. 8 days in which peace itself was celebrated rather than any victory of war. Abbey bells were muffled, street hawkers lowered their cries to murmurs, and even the great dragons who patrolled the skies above King's Landing were coaxed to settle in the freshly seeded meadows beyond the walls. The quiet festival had been Daenerys' idea, an annual acknowledgement that some silences deserved to be kept, and on its opening morning she awoke before dawn, padding barefoot across cool tiles to survey a city braced for uncustomary stillness. In the shadowed courtyard she found her grandson, Prince Enar, struggling to knot the heavy cloak clasp at his collar. The garment was ceremonial, snowwolf white trimmed with shimmer peach dragon velvet, a gift from Mara Rivers after Seed's first sky survey. Enar's brow furrowed. At 16 he had mastered mounted aerial maneuvers on Casaros, but not the simpler rites of brooches and buttons. Daenerys smiled softly, touched the clasp, and twisted until the dragon steel pin clicked. Then she adjusted the tilt of his collar so it swept like a wing across his shoulders. "Grandnana," Enar whispered, respecting the festival rules. "I dreamt of the sky again, a third aurora, deep crimson, like molten rubies, and voices chanting in the clouds." Daenerys studied his eyes, so dark they might have been cast from Valyrian glass. "Dreams can be guides," she breathed, "but never shackles. Listen to them, weigh them, but do not chain yourself to them." Enar nodded. "Will Jon speak today?" "He will listen today," she said. "And that is the harder task." She squeezed his shoulder. "Go on. They wait." He moved with youthful urgency down the palace stairs, cloak brushing mosaic floors. Daenerys followed more slowly, her bare feet feeling the cool tesserae. In the outer hall, she found Jon tying the final knot at the base of an ornamental stand. On it hung Longclaw's melted pommel, polished into a sphere of steel and dragonglass, flanked by the copper serpents now fused into a circlet. It had been 20 years since those artifacts last saw war, and only the faint glow within the glass hinted at the chaos they once harnessed. Jon stepped back, satisfied. Then he turned to Daenerys, his smile creasing laugh lines that had deepened each year. He wore only a plain dark tunic, no sword. The king dressed as a common man for the quiet festival. She touched his cheek. "You slept poorly." "Dreams," he murmured. "Storms at sea that never land, and wolves running on water." She considered. "Another warning? Or an assurance?" he replied. "Hard to tell when signs speak in riddles." They departed together through corridors lined with unlit torches, leaving each flame in silence. The palace gates opened onto the avenue of palms, where already thousands stood hushed. Children clutched paper lanterns shaped like lilies, ready to float in the river at dusk. Merchants stacked quiet market stalls with bread rolls painted with images of closed eyes. Fiddlers tuned strings but did not play, waiting for the signal hour. At the foot of the avenue rose the Harmony Pavilion, circular, planked from heart-forged steel, its roof thatched with woven willow fronds. The great dais inside was daisless, no elevation permitted this day. Every seat equal. Delegates of the harmonic accord arranged themselves. Karthik Stormkite engineers, Jade Sea fisher captains, Valyrian maesters in copper-green robes, and children who represented each orphanage, their sashes embroidered with stars. Mara Rivers stood among them, her dragon seed perched on a distant arch, wings furled. By tradition dragons kept 100 paces, Today, even their heartbeats felt muffled. Mara offered a nod to Jon and Daenerys, then pressed a tuning stone to her throat, humming a single note. The stone glowed, replicating her hum throughout the pavilion. It was the start tone, the festival's beginning. All voices ceased. Jon and Daenerys took seats side by side on low benches. Enar sat to Jon's right, Mara to Daenerys's left. The quiet deepened as the sun climbed. Leaves rustled softly overhead like distant sea foam. At midday, a messenger from the Jade Sea Enclave knelt before the council. His hair bore turquoise beads that chimed faintly. He laid a carved jade box at Mara's feet. She opened it to reveal a shard of resonance crystal, pulsing in cyclical blushes of blue. She spoke without raising her volume. Harvested at dawn 3 days past, beyond the serpent's maw. Stable frequency. No weaponization attempt detected. The assembly nodded, communication shared. No applause. A scribal child recorded the shard's pitch and waveform in a ledger. The shard would be placed in the resonance archive later, available to all. Next, a woman from Old Town parted her robes, displaying a copper-woven garment that glided across her arm. She whispered, "Weave of copper and flax, conductive layer, but thin enough for peasant's coin." She opened a basket of scraps for others to test. Tyrion's eldest pupil, a broad-shouldered smith from Rainwood, took one scrap, bent it, listened to how it sighed in the air. He signed approval with a tap of open palm against heart. Thus the festival continued. No speeches, no gavel. Each offering met with silent evaluation, scribal note, slight bows, or measured handclaps. Only once did sound swell above the soft rustle. When children from the lioness houses performed the candle dance. Tiny feet on padded floorboards, lanterns balanced on brows like halos, weaving patterns that spelled the charter's first clause in flickering shapes. At the end, every adult pressed fist to chest. The children bowed deeply. Even the dragons remained subdued, dozing along the city's ramparts. Seed, being youngest of the Skyworthy, occasionally rustled wings, but Mara sent him calm pulses through their bond, and he settled. When final offerings were complete, the sun had dipped behind the bay's far cliffs, gilding the water amber. As one, the assembly rose. Lanterns were lit, but no bell chimed. Instead, Mara lifted her tuning stone again. She hummed the closing note, a descending triad that ended on a barely audible breath. Delegates repeated it, soft waves of sound cascading outward until even the crowd beyond the pavilion hummed, thousands of voices forming a hush louder than thunder. Lanterns were released toward the river. Children guided them, making no splash. The vessels drifted along the water's mirror surface, reflections twin stars. Dragons lifted heads, watching the lights drift like fledgling constellations. Jon and Daenerys lingered by the pavilion entry. Enar touched both their arms. "Tomorrow we ride north," he whispered. "Casaros and I, plus the wildlings girl pack. We survey the frostmelt lichen bloom." Daenerys nodded, but her gaze lingered on the lanterns. "Madness once came by way of ambition's noise," she said, almost to herself. "Now peace must guard against the hush of complacency. Fly carefully, my little Dawn." Enar smiled, hugged her, and stepped off into the torchless avenue, boots soundless. When the crowd dispersed, Mara approached Jon and Daenerys with a scroll. "Harbors report a missing stormcatcher out of Sunspear," she murmured. "Last sighted near the Bentwater Reefs." Jon frowned. "Pirates again?" "Possibly," Mara said. "But the reefs hum louder these days. If they tuned the wrong note." Daenerys squeezed Mara's shoulder. "Go. Take Seed and 2 Skyforge riders. No ballistae. Carry tuning rods." Mara inclined her head. "We leave at moonrise." Moonrise found Mara tightening Seed's harness leather in the rookery yard. Torches remained unlit. Seed snorted warm air across her cheeks, his peach scales glowing faintly under stars. Mara's companions arrived. The Lyseni Aerologist Cadden, who carried a chest of quartz dials, and the Dothraki Windseer Irimo, whose eyes were the color of milk glass from staring into sunstorms. Cadden spread a chart on a crate. The Buntwater hum peaks here, he whispered, tapping a spot just south of the reef's jagged arc. We follow current, drop anchor, record. If pirates lurk, we mask ourselves in storm pocket. Dragon wings deflect sonar.
Ihre Montagsmarkt.
Sonar. Word for fish screams. Mara mounted. We keep watchers in the dusk lens. No kill strikes unless absolutely required. Seed launched, wings cleaving quiet air. Dragons of Mara's companions, smaller skyforged crossbreeds, followed. The trio soared above rooftops kissed silver by moon. Beyond the bay they dipped low, hugging mist banks, heading south. Hours passed. Stars wheeled. At the Buntwater reefs, the sea glowed faint turquoise, a chemical bloom stirred by deep ocean vents. Black silhouettes of ruined galleys lay half-sunken among coral towers like ragged gravestones. Seed circled once then landed on a stable outcropping of reef stone. Waves lapped. Cadden unpacked his dials onto a folding table. Irimo knelt, pressing ear to stone. Earth heart hums, she murmured. Like great stallion's hooves, Mara lay a palm to reef wall. Through flesh she felt vibration. Not violent, just persistent, a bass note. She recorded its pitch lower than any aurora resonance, yet similar to the hum that once preceded the emerald spear. But there was no sky column, no green glow. A faint cry echoed across water. Mara turned. On a skeletal clump of mastwood perched a starved gull, one wing torn to bone. It screeched, but the sound carried strangely, almost metallic. Then she realized it echoed. Irimo stiffened. Not gull. Echo box. The gull shape flickered, illusory. A hidden projector? Before Mara could respond, water churned around the reef. Up surged a dark shape, submersible hull constructed of interlaid copper plates. Panels opened. Nets of star iron flung upward, aiming for Seed. Mara shouted. Seed tensed, wings beating to lift, but star iron edges scraped scales, leaving glowing fissures. Mara drew her resonance dagger, thin shard of tempered dragonglass, slashed the nearest cables. Sparks flew. Cadden triggered one of his dials. It emitted ultrasonic squeal that disrupted Net's harmonics, weakening links. From submersible hatch rose cloaked figures brandishing resonance harpoons, their masks embossed with serpent Ouroboros. Someone resurrected the emerald dream. Mara swore, "We need sky." Seed, with wounded dignity, forced altitude pulling Net's taut. He rose, dragging contraption partly out of water. Dothraki Irimo bounded onto narrower winged dragon, spiraled above the attackers, dropped weighted tuning stones. They clanged off hulls, each impact detuning harpoon's crystals. Sparks showered. Nets slackened. Suddenly the sea itself groaned. A pulse of deep resonance more powerful than any Mara had felt surged through stone. The reef cracked. Spires toppled. Submersible pitched. From the depths a geyser of black water gushed, carrying shards of obsidian and bones. The Buntwater reef had awakened. Mara's riders steered dragons higher. The submersible's crew scrambled, but their vessel listed, caught in undertow. Mara glimpsed a copper-masked leader raising a staff tipped with emerald splinter. It glowed malevolent. She hurled her dagger. It struck staff shaft, severed gem. Emerald spark fizzed. Staff imploded. The leader vanished in flash of green vapor. Without anchor crystal, submersible lost power, sinking into whirlpool. Seed bucked, nets snapping free. Mara guided him toward shore as reef collapsed, sucking wreckage and submersible into churning maw. Irimo and Cadden flanked her. Dragons rattled but unhurt. They landed on an offshore stack of basalt. Mara dismounted, heart hammering. The reef behind them settled into black quiet, waves lapping as though nothing occurred. A lone star iron net shimmered in surf, broken. Cadden swallowed. Someone mined the reef with resonant shock stones. Trying to harvest the hum for a new weapon, Mara said. And they knew how to disguise a submersible.
Ihre Montag flicket Brez.
Serpents coil anew. But they lost their shard, Mara noted. retrieving her dagger from shoreline. Staff fragments fused to blade, green veins pulsing. She wrapped cloth around hilt. We bring this to Skyforge. Let Quillford analyze. Sea mist cooled around them. Mara lifted her gaze to horizon where first blush of dawn pinked clouds. Seed chirred softly, nudging her shoulder as if to ask, "Safe? For now," she whispered, scratching his jaw. "But we remain watchful." At Skyforge, Quillford shuddered when Mara laid the fused blade on his bench. "Gem fractures align unnatural," he said, as though coaxed to grow veins. "Can it breach a raise?" she asked. "Not alone," he replied. "But feed enough sky hum, it could seed a new spear." His voice dropped. "Emerald flame may be dust, but there are always disciples of chaos." Mara crossed arms. "We propose a roaming watch sky warden stationed at major resonance nodes.
Dragon plume à Esther.
Quarterly rotation." Quillford sighed, weary but proud. "Then draft it. Submit to accord. We cannot close the world. We can only broaden vigilance." Weeks drifted. Streets whispered of the Buntwada collapse. Some feared another serpent uprising. Others shrugged. The dragons saved us again. For Jon and Daenerys, it was reminder that peace was not a state but a motion, like heartbeats. They convened councils, dispatched watchers, yet refused to let fear banish hope. On a crisp winter morning, Jon visited the roof garden where Enar examined frost-coated leaves with a lens. "Grandfather," the prince said, "I still dream ruby aurora. Could it be omen?" Jon knelt. "Perhaps it is invitation to learn." He pointed north. The frost-melt lichen glow ruby at certain phases. "You and Casaros saw the bloom." Enar's eyes widened. "Yes. Maybe your dream says, go again, look deeper. Answers hide beneath questions." Enar smiled. "Then I will ride at first thaw." Jon tousled his hair. "Take Mara." Her ears no sky language. Deep winter returned. Snow-dusted Concord span, muffling footfalls. Dragons hibernated in low flight, conserving strength. In the Godswood courtyard, Daenerys stood at the heart tree, trimming dead leaves. Jon joined her, wooden rake in hand. She paused, surveying crimson veins on white bark. "These trees remember everything," Bran said. Jon raked gently. "Let them remember choices." She gazed up. "If we had chosen differently that day, burned the city, would the world just be another drumbeat of war?" Jon's rake stopped. He considered. Maybe, or maybe someone else would have risen to seek peace. "But we do know that by sparing King's Landing we gave the world permission to hope." He smiled. "Even if hope is daily chore." She laughed softly. "A very heavy chore. And one worth carrying," he said, placing rake aside to wrap arms around her. Snowflakes settled on silver hair. They stood until bells, this time unmuffled, chimed from the Hall of Commons. It was time for the midwinter parliament. Hand in hand they traversed quiet halls, footsteps ringing soft. Beyond doors, murmurs awaited. Proposals for saltmarsh restoration, a petition from river mummers for traveling performance rights, complaints about dragon droppings on barley fields. Nothing dramatic, nothing dire. Yet each a thread in the loom of peace. Daenerys took her seat, eyes bright. Jon bowed his head, listening, ready to weigh every word. The world outside might tremble with hidden storms, but within these walls, harmony hummed, fragile but undeniable. And in the rafters, Mara Rivers watched from Scholar's Gallery, fingers tapping subtle rhythms that echoed Seed's far-distant heartbeat. Song of dawn, song of endless choosing. As evening lanterns lit, the parliament rose to depart. On the parapet's dragons stretched wings, preparing to patrol starlit skies. In every hearth and city square, lute players plucked gentle chords. Families tucked children beneath quilts stitched with wolf, dragon, and rose. Somewhere beyond the horizon, unknown dreamers plotted darkness. Yet here, tonight, the realm breathed in radiant hush, promising once more that the gentlest word can tame the fiercest flame, and dawn, though tested, forever finds a way to rise. Night poured over the capital like ink, suffusing every alley with soft shadow. Lanterns glowed as scattered embers along the wharves, and the great dragons roost in silence on the outer towers, immense shapes barely outlined in starlight. Within the high keep's western wing, a single corridor flickered. Pale green flame danced in a glass sconce, one of the skyfire lamps that hummed faintly whenever aurora currents spiked. Mara rivers slowed before it, listening to its vibration. Tonight the flame thrummed at a pitch she'd never logged, midway between the 7th and 9th overtones, almost a heartbeat. She rested palm on the stone wall.
No tremor.
Either the aurora had shifted alignment, or some distant instrument sang against it. Soft leather steps approached. Enar moved into view, carrying 2 rolled charts. His hair, damp from rainfall, clung to cheeks still flush with youth. "You felt it too," he whispered. "I was coming to check the altar crystals." Mara touched the flame again. "We need to compare harmonic drift." He unrolled his charts. One inked earlier in the day, baseline frequencies along Stepstone Corridor. The other, a fresh scribble with spiking red lines. At dusk the hum rose 3 decibels across 6 nodes, then fell low but never returned to base. That shouldn't happen without a storm injection. Unless someone forced a resonance leak from the Buntwater pocket we sealed, Mara murmured. She tapped the chart. "Here, notice the echo period is 33 breaths. That matches the pattern of the Emerald Spear's first coil." Enar's throat tightened. "So the disciples still claw beneath the sea." A sudden hush thudded through the corridor. The green light winked out. They stood blind for a heartbeat before a new glow ignited. Violet, deeper and colder, and a vibration passed through their ribs as though plucked by unseen harp. Mara's pulse spiked. "This is wrong." Enar seized her sleeve. "We must reach the beacon spire." They ran. Boots pounded marble, echoing like distant drums. Turning a corner, they collided with Bran's attendant pushing the wheeled chair. Bran himself sat there, eyes wide, pupils milk-white. He spoke before they could. "The lullaby fractures. The ruby sky descends." Enar stiffened. "My dream." Bran's hand shook as he lifted it. "Beware the quiet that screams." Lightning cracked above the courtyard skylights, purple and crimson arcs that did not belong to any natural storm. Stone groaned. Far tower bells clanged, and a dragon's roar answered, regal, furious, and alarmed. Mara dashed to the nearest window. Over the godswood, a rift of ruby aurora had opened vertical, like a wound bleeding color. From its depths poured faint wisps, serpentine shadows descending. The air smelled like scorched copper. Jon burst into the corridor, breath steaming. Daenerys beside him, barefoot, hair whipping. "Signal the dragons," she said. "They already feel it," Mara replied. "Seed is tugging at me like a fish at line." She drew deep breath. The resonance ward in Skyforge must be breached for that crack to form. Enar looked between them. "We sealed every seam. Except the hidden ones," Bran whispered. "The resonance of silence." He shut eyes, body seizing. "They come wearing hush like armor." Daenerys faced Mara. "Take Enar. Secure the Skyforge and the Heartforge both. We hold the rift here." Jon nodded. "I'll rally unsullied." Mara gripped Enar's forearm, nodded at Bran's attendant. "Move him to the inner sanctum, copper-lined chamber." Then chaos leapt into motion. They emerged onto the outer terrace where Regal perched, wings half-spanned, staring at the ruby fissure. Beyond him the rooftops lit red from above, and the hush of the quiet festival shattered as people gasped. Mara vaulted onto Seed's saddle. Enar leapt behind her. Regal took flight at Daenerys's whistle, Drogon and Viserion rising from distant turrets. Dragons streaked toward the rift like flaming arrows. Seed veered south, into the wind. They soared over Concord Span, its beams humming discordant. The river below glowed faint violet. Sky resonance hitting water, energizing salts. Lanterns from the quiet festival bobbed along the current, their serene image marred by unnatural light. Ahead, the Skyforge needle glittered with active wards. But as they approached, Green-violet sparks cascaded from its mirror plates. Sabotage. On an upper platform, silhouettes moved, cloaked figures hauling crates. Star iron flashes. Seed landed hard. Mara untethered, sprinted up the spiral ramp, Enar at her heels. Wind howled through lattice struts, making copper wires whine. At the summit, 3 saboteurs strapped emerald shards into a lattice coupler. Each wore serpent masks hammered from sheet orichalcum. One turned, eyes burning ruby. Children of quiet. The figure hissed, voice echoing triple-layered. The hush devours song. Mara swept up a tuning dagger, lunged. Star iron blade clashed. A shower of sparks. Enar swung his lantern staff, knocking a shard from coupler. The saboteur hissed, flicked wrist. Thin whip of skyfire spooled forth. Mara ducked. The lash scorched railing. She whistled sharply. Seed launched a short flame burst, not lethal but blinding. While saboteur shielded eyes, Enar rammed lantern staff into coupler again. The emerald matrix cracked, resonance shrieking. The skyforge plates shuddered, then gradually dimmed. Yet the rift above widened, regardless. Mara felt it. The sky hum now sourced from beyond the city, perhaps from every silent corner where fear nested. One saboteur backflipped, landing on the ramp. It lifted mask, revealing youthful face, barely older than Enar, eyes wide with zeal. "Silence shall crown the Serpent Queen," he said, voice trembling with fervor. He flung a disk of serrated crystal. It whistled past Mara, buried in pillar. She hurled her dagger. It lodged in his shoulder. He sped, stumbled, fell over rail into night. 2 remaining saboteurs backed toward a skiff tethered below the platform. Mara reached for them, but a thunderous crack split the sky. The rift vomited crimson lightning that slammed into the Heart Forge tower miles away. White-hot column erupted, illuminating the entire bay. Stone flared. A shockwave rocked the Skyforge. Mara and Enar dropped, clinging. Over city rooftops, dragons roared. Drogon soared across Rift's lower edge, flame blazing brilliant gold. Fire met skyfire, clashing. But red arcs wrapped like vines, seeking to siphon his flame. He twisted, bellowing frustration. On the ground, Jon led unsullied formations toward the Heart Forge. Copper steel shields raised overhead deflected falling debris. Daenerys rode regal, following plume of skyfire where it struck the forge's cupola. Mara's earpiece buzzed. Cadden's voice. Equation spike. Southern nodes overloading. Disconnect sequence. She snarled into mic. Hold until we cut rift feed. Then yanked Enar upright. We must reach the rift anchor, above the godswood. They mounted Seed. He shot off, wings beating through roiling energy. The air throbbed, heavy. They climbed through thermal drafts until they neared the rift mouth. A shimmering tear in starcloth, edges crackling. Within flitted ghost serpents, fractal shadows of some otherworld energy. Enar pointed. A rotating device hung beneath the tier, suspended by unseen force. A resonance gyroscope composed of copper rings and emerald shards, each band spinning counter to others, sucking power from aurora lines. Saboteurs planted it, he said. Heart Forge strike is its bleed valve. Mara drew breath. If we invert its polarity, rift collapses. She had no time to test. Intuition guided. Gems at crosspoints tuned to hushed tones. Invert to lullaby. She began humming. The same lullaby used on the night of the charter's birth. The start tone descending to close note. Seed echoed. Enar joined, voice trembling but strong. The gyroscope flickered. Rings wobbled. Dragons below recognized the melody. Regal's roar deepened to harmonic foundation. Drogon's answered in antiphonal call. Sound waves licked sky. The rift edges shimmered, unstable. But the device resisted. It needed a final push. Enar loosened harness. Mara turned wide-eyed. No, she whispered. He pressed her arm. Dreams led me here. If hush must be broken, let my voice break it. Before she could seize him, he leapt from saddle, free-falling toward gyroscope. his body cut through thin air. Seed dove after, but Einar had already reached the device. He caught outer ring, weight spinning him. He grabbed a shard, sang note. Clear, strong, unwavering. His pitch matched Ruby Aurora's hum, then slid upward, clashing in perfect dissonance. Crystal fissured. Ring stuttered. Energy backlash flared. Einar's cloak ignited. Seed's jaws snapped closed around him, but too late. Magic rippled outward. The rift convulsed, edges folding inward like sails in wind, collapsing. Crimson coaxial lines retracted into vanishing point. Silence, true total followed. Seed soared from cloud. Einar dangled unconscious in harness mouth. Mara's tears flew back on wind. They landed at Godswood clearing now glittering under inert stars. She slid down, grabbing Einar. Pulse faint, burns along arms. Maesters ran from towers. Unsullied parted. Jon slid to knees beside his grandson, whispering. Daenerys landed regal, hair charred, eyes wild. She dropped to Einar's other side, pressed lips to his forehead. Live little dawn, she murmured. Dragons circled overhead, keening. From heart-forged plume, flame had subsided, but tower's top glowed. Quillford approached, soot-black face. Forge intact, he wheezed, but couplers shattered. We will rebuild. Dawn lightened horizon. Einar stirred, coughing. His eyes opened, mirrored the pale blue of new morning. He attempted a smile. The hush screamed, he croaked. We sang back. Daenerys wept softly. Jon clasped his forearm. Rest, hero of quiet. Mara stepped away, heart pounding. She looked to Seed, he bowed head. She mouthed thank you. Across city, bells remained still. Yet no one spoke. The quiet festival found itself reborn. A silence filled with reverence, not fear. People knelt in streets, hands clasped, heads bowed as rose-gold dawn spilled across stone. When sun cleared the towers, Daenerys rose, helped Einar sit under heart trees' crimson leaves. She addressed the assembled with voice barely above whisper. Silence saved us, but only because voices dared to pierce it with truth. Einar's act shows our greatest defense is not swords, nor dragons, but song, shared by many, carried by hearts willing to risk everything. Jon's gaze scanned survivors. Unsullied tending wounded, maesters collecting shards, dragons landing gentle among rubble. We will repair. We will refine wards. But fear does not own the night. Bran's attendant emerged, rolling the three-eyed seer. Bran looked older, fainter, yet his voice rang. The hush will threaten again. It feeds on forgetfulness. Remember, and it fails. Mara stepped forward. I propose we weave the lullaby into every public clock tower, into canal gates, into school recitations. Let no silence exist without memory of harmony. Council nodded. Quillford raised soot-smeared thumb. Daenerys smiled at Mara. Draft it. We ratify at first thaw. Winter matured, blanketing North Road and fields. Masons rebuilt Skyforge plates with new alloy. Steel from Longclaw's melted sphere infused with resonance-dampening basalt. Heart-forged couplers replaced with mirrored obsidian veins that absorbed surplus sky hum. Stepstone nodes retrofit with self-shuttering petals. Einar healed slowly. Burns faded to latticework scars that glowed soft under Aurora. He spent afternoons in library, studying resonance mathematics. Nights walking Godswood, singing endless variations of the lullaby with Mara, perfecting intervals. One evening, Bran summoned Einar alone. In the tower, Bran's voice floated like drifting snow. Dreams still visit you. Einar nodded. Now they're quieter. They always quiet after being heard. Bran's chair creaked. Tell me the ruby sky in final dream. Einar closed eyes. It opened again far north, where cracked ice floats. But this time the crimson tide bent upward, lifting columns of water into sky, creating bridges. Bran's lips twitched. Bridges lead both directions. One day we may cross beyond this world's threshold. Einar shivered. Will that be peace or peril? Depends on Singer. Bran said. He reached, fingers trembling, and pressed a carved wooden flute into Enar's hand. Dragonbone, whittled with my last strength. When silence threatens, play. Enar bowed. Thank you, Uncle Bran. Bran's eyes closed, exhaustion heavy. Guard the lullaby, Prince of Dawn. Moon cycles turned. Spring thaw unlocked green flood in crownlands. Lichen bloom spread north. Dragons carried water seeds to help new forests anchor melted tundra. In cities, children learned the lullaby of quiet, now official anthem of Remembrance Days. At the Festival of Dawning, exactly 1 year after the Ruby Rift's collapse, the realm gathered on plains beyond the city. Dragons ringed an enormous amphitheater fashioned from copper timber and skyforged glass. In its center stood a modest stage where 3 musicians waited. Mara, holding her resonance dagger reforged as flute. Enar, Bran's dragonbone flute cradled. And young bard Kasai of Dornish Sands, whose voice could coax tears from stone.
No banner soon, no heralds boomed.
When the first aurora swirl shimmered above, soft green threading pale violet, Mara lifted her flute. She played the start tone. Enar added Bran's lower drone. Kasai breathed melody old as first fire. Their harmony rose, wrapping the plains. Dragons bowed heads. People closed eyes. The sky responded. Aurora arcs flexed, swaying with the music. Soft as dawn, ruby streaks eased across green. But they no longer cut. They danced. And as the final note faded, thousands held breath, expecting hush. Instead, a collective sigh of wonder slipped out, quiet, but not silent. It was acknowledgement. Peace was not lack of sound, but balance. A lullaby continuing, shaped by each voice that chose to join rather than break. Daenerys, gray-haired yet stately, leaned into Jon's shoulder. He whispered, "Our thread holds." She answered, "Because new hands weave it now." She watched Enar lift his flute in salute, Seed and Cassaro streak overhead, wingtip to wingtip, painting contrails in dawn's first gold. Jon's eyes filled with unshed tears. In that horizon-kissed moment, the wheel's spokes gleamed in gentle light, no longer crushing, but spinning, turning starlight to promise. And somewhere beyond sight, in chill expanse where serpent dreams once festered, echo of the lullaby drifted, carrying message to any who might listen. That the fiercest fires need not destroy, that even the greatest hush can yield to song, and that dawn, though fragile, will always, always rise.